What is up, wrestling fans, and welcome back to episode 518 of the Smark Moment Smack Talk podcast, Hot Tags of the Week, where we break down all the news and ongoings in the world of wrestling. I am not your host, as always, Tony Mango. I am your co-host, Robert D. Felice, usually, but today I have a co-host, Calvin Wiggins.
Yep, alongside you here. It's nice of you to invite me along for the hot tags after Tony's sudden departure from the entire channel. Goodbye, Tony. It's nice knowing you.
Well, maybe. Obviously, Tony Mango is getting married or has gotten married as you hear this, and we're going to take over for the week just to keep you guys updated with all the news going on in the world of wrestling. So how you doing this week, Alan?
I'm doing pretty good. It's been a little while since our 10th anniversary edition of the Smark Moment, like the podcast in general, and doing that extra long edition with you, me, Tony,
Peyton
and Drew joining us as well. It's just back to us two for the time being. Obviously, us here with Tony enjoying a well-deserved break over in Brazil. I don't know if he's over in Brazil just yet, but he's enjoying the honeymoon period. He's going to be away from the podcast for a little while. Of course, you can still hear a lot of him and hear all of us in terms of the stuff that we've pre-recorded prior to this with all our mock draft of the all-time WWE roster. And yeah, so that stuff has gone out live, and you'll be hearing all the additional cards that we come up with based on the draft that we did over on the YouTube channel and through the podcast feeds, which is probably something
it is worth noting that we don't know if this will be hitting YouTube. This will at least go out on the traditional podcast feeds. But as Tony is, tending to other things, we don't know if he's going to actually make a thumbnail and upload this to YouTube. So please support us on all our podcast feeds and stay on the YouTube and check out all that fantasy booking stuff, because that was a blast to record. And as always, support us through Patreon, Redbubble, TeePublic, all those merchandise websites, because even $1 goes a long way. We are a very small operation here at Smark Moment, and every penny counts, and we do appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Check out, as I was saying, just check out patreon.com/SmarkOutMoment. Check out, as Rob says, all the merchandise shops. Check out smarkoutmoment.com website for all the articles, all the weekly stuff that goes on out there as well. And yeah, there's a lot of news, so we probably should be diving straight into it and maybe throw a few other little plugs and bits and pieces as we go along.
Yeah, as is usual when you and I get together, usually for a retro podcast, the news of the week, they're not a lot of happy bits. No. Very glib this week. But I think one thing that we should start off with is Jon Moxley entering an inpatient alcohol treatment program. Now, this news dropped on Tuesday night, right as you're going into Wednesday for Dynamite. Tony Khan shared on Twitter that Jon Moxley is entering an alcohol treatment program, and it is unknown when he will return to the ring, but right now he's doing what he needs to do to care for himself and his family. And first of all, this is very surprising to hear, but above all else, even though it's a bit of a bummer that Jon won't be on TV and that he's going through these issues, good on Jon Moxley for getting the help he needs, and good on Jon Moxley for reaching out and asking for that help.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear to see with like the outpouring of support that Moxley has received through Twitter and any other form of platform. It's the most courageous decision to know that you're suffering through these sort of problems, like whether it's alcohol related, drug related, anything of that regards, and to recognise that you do have a problem and being willing to stand up and take ownership of that problem and do something about it. And so that's a really brave call for him to make, especially considering the fact that per all like speculation that was leading into, he was part of the world title eliminator tournament that's going on right now. It was likely that he would have defeated Orange Cassidy on the episode of Dynamite and advanced to the finals to take on Bryan Danielson, because that would have been speculated for a while. And then there was a lot of speculation that he might have been the one to win it as well. and then be the first challenger for whoever was be a challenger for whoever won the world title match. So being able to like take perspective, put yourself first, put your family first, and go seek the treatment that you feel you need it's a really brave decision, and all the support to Jon Moxley and Renee and his entire family for during this time that they're going to be during this challenging time, I imagine, for all of them.
Yeah, and like you said, it's very cool that he was able to have the wherewithal to just say, you know what, yes, I'm on a great run, yes, things are going great, but I need to do this for myself and for my family, so let me pull myself out of the equation here. Because as we'll talk about when we talk about our show reviews, it's very likely he was going to at least head to Full Gear and face Bryan Danielson. And it's nice that he was able to say, you know what, this means more than wrestling right now. And I know other promotions like Defy Wrestling came out and said they support him. And there was no real mention of what would become of the GCW title, but he does hold that as well. I'm sure they'll figure that out as they need to. And yeah, just kudos to Jon Moxley, and we will update you on his situation as more updates are made available.
Absolutely. So when Tony's usually doing this, he usually tries to get a lot of the smaller stuff out of the way early, but I feel like we're in charge now. It's the inmates running the asylum, essentially, for the time being. So we've already spoken about Jon Moxley. I feel that's one of the biggest stories of the week. But let's talk about the absolute top story, because this is going to take up a huge amount of this, a huge proportion of this podcast, which is WWE released 18 superstars from their contracts this week
and they ain't small names, folks.
No, it was a collection of main roster and NXT talent, and it's just a extensive list of people. So I'm going to go through each and every one of these 18 people. I want to get we'll talk about each one, but I'm going to go on them based on what I kind of, not too obviously, it's obviously terrible that any of these people have lost their jobs, but I feel like the ones that we might have the least amount to say, and then build up to the real heavy hitters at the end.
Yeah, there is quite a disparity. No disrespect to anybody who's lost their job, but the varying quality here is insane.
So let's start with Jeet Rama.
Yep, that's the one I would have started with. And listen, he was there for 6 years. He was there well before they were doing the NXT India stuff. It's very clear that that is off the table. I do not fault them for saying, hey, let's part ways. Maybe we'll meet again down the road. Jeet Rama did have a pretty good match with AJ Styles at Superstar Spectacle. I don't know if you ever watched that show, but I thought that was one of the better ones. And I'm sure when the time is right, he will find a home again.
Yeah, obviously, the only match I've ever seen Jeet Rama was the most recent episode of NXT 2.0 when he lost to Solo Sikoa in Sikoa's debut. It seems quite. I can't really wrap my head around the fact that he was with the company for 6 years, considering the fact that he probably had
because
he probably only had like 2 or 3 televised matches, and just again, it kind of strengthens my opinions about what is this performance center actually doing, and or what is creative doing with these people in this performance center. Like, surely after 6 years, you'd imagine he'd at least get an opportunity beyond the fact that he was Indian, and so he would appear on Superstar Spectacle.
I think Triple H, the vision he had for the performance center is gone now, and I think the new vision for the performance center will be a straight up, all right, we're taking brand new people and we're going to mold them into our image of a WWE superstar. And I think that's one of the reasons why you've seen a lot of these NXT releases. And Jeet Rama is probably like, look, we're not doing the expansion. There is no place for you right now. Let's just part ways. Because it's one thing, I have a theory, and we'll talk about it as we go on, but I believe that WWE no longer feels morally obligated to try to house as many professional wrestlers as possible, because there is actually another place to work now. So I think that that's changed a lot of things for them.
I mean, we can talk about that theory. I personally struggle to believe the concept of WWE showing any kind of moral obligation or empathy towards anybody, considering what they've just done with releasing a huge amount of their talent. I never felt like their reason of signing so many people on the independent circuit and stockpiling wrestlers was due to a feeling of wanting to house the most amount of talent possible. I thought it was a case of, okay, AEW is probably starting soon. Get everybody in, prevent them from growing. They'll die within a year of being formed. And now Nick Khan's here, and things are starting to operate a little bit differently. But we only spoke about the first.
See, like I'm looking at it like when Triple H first started taking over talent development, like he might have thought as a wrestler, hey, there's nowhere else to work. Maybe we should try to do something with some of these independent names, because that was really a strength of the NXT, if you want to call it NXT 1.0 or whatever, but like that was really a strength. Now that's completely out the window.
Yeah, well, yeah, we can definitely talk about the fact that I don't doubt that Triple H did want to sign a lot of. Was looking at he has a wrestler's perspective of things, because he was obviously a wrestler as well, and so he identified the talent and he could see the evolution of the business, and so was keen on bringing in a lot of people from the actual independent circuit rather than collegiate athletes or anything along those lines that don't have traditional wrestling backgrounds, but somebody who could be molded into the WWE style, which is what seems the current iteration of NXT 2.0 is all about. But it kind of leads into maybe a bit more of a wider statement. I know this has been speculated and talked about as well by other people, but that Triple H has lost a significant amount of power behind the scenes.
Well, right now he's not even.
Well, yeah, obviously right now he's not even actively available due to.
Right, like he's still out of commission, and we don't even know, like, what that means. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it does kind of feel like, especially with a lot of the names that we're going to mention here, that it almost feels like, and again, I know other people speculate, but it does feel like a message is being sent here.
Oh, it does.
Because it's essentially, these people aren't just a random assortment of people. These are people who seemingly in some form or another is something either Triple H would have intimated of, like, yeah, I want this person for this reason and I see a lot in this person, and then they're basically all gone up to the main roster, or a lot of them have gone up to the main roster and just gone, nah, that doesn't work for me, trips.
Yeah,
so
it's insane, because not even like recent NXT names. We're going to talk about some names that, even if you look back at like the Tyler Breeze era of NXT, everybody's just going away, and it makes you really wonder, is that era of NXT as beloved as it was from 2015 to, or even 2014 to 2020, let's say, is that era ultimately a failure?
I think it depends on whose perspective you're looking at. I mean, if they want to look at it as a commercial or business, or how they see the company moving forward, I'd probably say they would see it as a failure. I don't think, obviously, people that actually enjoyed the product would see it that way. I think it was a creative success for a lot of fans, but it's a structural failure almost.
I think I'd make the argument that NXT under Triple H brought a lot of prosperity and short-term gain. Very short-term. Like, Kevin Owens came in, he had a run, he ran through the main roster, he's probably leaving in February. You know what I mean? Like, short-term, NXT 1.0 provided a boom for WWE, but I don't think it provided any of the long-term gain outside of the Four Horsewomen that maybe they were hoping it would.
Well, I guess we better progress along, because we've only spoken about Jeep Rama so far and gone into like a lot more wider discussion points. But focusing back on names, let's talk about Katrina Cortez. So, I mean, this is a lot wider than just the release as well. But Katrina Cortez, obviously Tony's favorite wrestler, signed in August 2019. Originally
went right up to Monday Night Raw.
Yeah, to team up with Sin Cara in a feud between those two and Andrade and Zelina Vega. Last wrestled on October 29th, episode 205 Live, and lost to Saray. And yeah, she's someone who like never really kind of like got any sort of real push or any sort of real notoriety, and it's not like it's not a huge surprise that she's one of the people to be let go.
You know what, though? I finally thought that they were going to start building her. Because it seemed like, okay, she's being featured more regularly on television. Maybe they're finally going to start putting an emphasis on getting her to the next level. And clearly they weren't, and clearly they decided to cut bait. The sad thing here is she tweeted out yesterday, we're recording this on Saturday, November 6th. She tweeted out on November 5th that she got an email stating that her work visa would expire in a month, and that even though she'd worked so hard to accomplish all these things and moved to a new country and just started over at 18, she had to sell a lot of what she achieved, and she didn't know how she was going to, what her next move would be in her personal life, which I just think is awful. Like,
Yeah,
this is one of those things where we try to talk about WWE objectively as a wrestling company, but when you read shit and hear shit like this, you just get angry on a personal, because it's like, come on, you can do better to take care of people. Come on, you know? It's just a shame.
It seems such awful timing with the idea that she leaves the company that's obviously employing her at the point when her visa is about to expire, which means that she's uprooted her life to join WWE, like presumably moved to Florida, be part of the Performance Center, all that stuff, and now her visa's going to expire. She's going to have to go back to, or either work to try and correct these issues, which would mean she would probably need some other form of employment. Realistically, she can't be employed by anyone else for 30 days at the very least, and yeah, she'll have to go back and pretty much start from square one, which feels like a
now
it's a
I
horrible
wonder.
thing.
I don't want to speculate too hard, but I do wonder if like she did make friends in the Performance Center days with names like Ezra Judge or Tay Conti, people that are working elsewhere that can maybe help her, because like that's such an uprooting thing, and that's so heartbreaking. On top of losing this job that you've been working to improve that, and we've made our jokes and had our fun, but like she obviously cared enough to uproot her life and make those moves. And I just think that it's a heartbreaking situation, and I hope that something can be done for her.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll move on to Zeida Ramirez. Only signed with the company this year.
Yeah.
She was immediately, I don't say immediately pushed, but her debut match was against Toni Storm, and they decided to go with the upset, like, oh my god, she won against this established name straight away. And then she had a few other matches against like some more established names that I think she fought Saray at some point. She teamed up with Zoey Stark against Candice LeRae and Indy Hartwell. But then she wasn't used. She hasn't been used since NXT 2.0's rebrand, and yeah, she's gone as well.
I'm so shocked.
She seemed to be talented, but obviously we didn't see a lot of her.
Well, she is very talented, and she's like one of the star pupils of Booker T. And I just like, what happens there? Like, who makes the decision to just be like, nope, I don't care for what you're bringing to the table? Because the way that they have chopped a lot of the women's division is insane. I've said this on the Fightful AEW podcast. The women's division is the one area that WWE had a clear, they were miles ahead than AEW. How have they shit the bed with this? How are you not saying, this is what we do better than you? Let's, keep growing women's wrestling. It really does feel like, on the whole, that women's wrestling is taking a huge backseat in WWE.
Yeah. And obviously, as we're going to mention through a lot of these names here, there's a there's a significant proportion of female talent that was released as part of these cuts. So we got more to mention, but move on to, I think, Trey Baxter. I think is probably the next one to
Blake
talk
Christian already has December 4th and December 17th dates at GCW. I was surprised he wasn't cut when Alex Zane was cut, because I just saw that if they didn't want Alex Zane, or you might know him as Ari Sterling, that they wouldn't want Trey Baxter. They kept him on. They put him with his real-life girlfriend on TV. The last thing he did on NXT TV was get beat up by Elektra Lopez. He will be fine. He will probably work AEW Dark. He will be more than fine. I can't wait to see what he does.
Yeah, he looks like someone who's immediately found his feet. He feels like someone who doesn't feel like he's going to be faced too badly by this turn of events. And as I say, he's already found work with GCW. He'll go back to there. He'll work the independents. I'm sure he'll appear on AEW Darks and stuff like that. If they see a lot in him, then they'll give him more of a look. But yeah, I'm sure he can land in Impact. He could land in a lot of other places. That's another thing we'll talk about when we get through the end of this thing as well. But yeah, I think Trey Baxter is someone who will find his feet very quickly. Jessie Kamia.
I liked her in the Mae Young Classic.
Yeah.
She never did much. I thought she was better served as like the nerdy character than the kind of bougie Robert Stone brand character. That's another act that got chopped, you know. Jessie Kamia, though, I hope she continues wrestling. I really do.
Yeah, absolutely. I was never super enamored with her work so far, but there is something about to be said about, well, I was never super enamored with Taikon Chi's work in NXT, and then she comes over to AEW and starts standing out. So maybe
great.
So maybe it's the environment, not the performer. Maybe it's a mixture of both. But I'm sure she'll find opportunities. It makes me feel kind of disappointed that Ring of Honor, obviously that's a big deal. It's the fact that Ring of Honor is going under, or at least going to be taking a hiatus, because they were starting to build up their women's division, and so she might have been able to find a good home there. But I'm sure there will be plenty of opportunities come up. Impact's always looking for good new women's workers. AEW obviously needs to build up their women's roster, and she might get opportunities on Dark and Elevation. There's the Indies. Yeah, so I hope that she doesn't give this up.
Yeah, me neither. But here's a name I want to discuss, because there's simultaneously a lot and nothing to say in Harry Smith.
Yeah, so this might be one of the most bizarre out of all of them. I think there are a few ones that are like, oh my god, they actually got rid of them. This one's bizarre because Harry Smith was obviously re-signed earlier this year, and he appeared in a dark match on SmackDown. They did a little I remember on YouTube they did a backstage interview thing with him saying that, oh, he's back, and
he's excited.
And there seem to be plans about him going over to NXT UK, becoming like a big star on that roster. And then he's just gone without even appearing on any like legitimate programming.
So this pisses me off, because this is like, look, they clearly don't care about second generation talent anymore, but this is the son of the Bulldog. This is like Bret Hart's nephew, and it's not like he's bad. He's very, very good. Why in God's name wouldn't they say, hey, let's finally do something with you? You're a name. We can push you based on name value alone. You're a former WWE Tag Team Champion in our world. And there's also all of this lineage and history, and you're so good. By the way, they never aired that damn episode of Icons covering Bulldog. It's very weird how that whole thing went down. And Harry Smith told me at like early 2019, I interviewed him, and he told me JR wanted him bad for AEW, but he was under contract to MLW at the time. I hope to God we just push this man. He takes up the British Bulldog Jr. name, or Davey Boy Smith Jr. name again. I hope he's just runs to the top of like the AEW side of things, because he's so good, and his family. And by the way, great time to release him. There's something called the Owen Hart Memorial Cup being formed in AEW, And I can't think of a better name to at least be in the tournament than Harry Smith.
No, yeah,
Shocking.
No, again, he's someone who I think will find work very easily. I feel like AEW is obviously a good option. I feel they could do something pairing him up with Varsity Blondes, maybe, because obviously there's the Brian Pillman connection there. So to have the second generation workers there. New Japan Strong, I feel, will be a very good place for him as well. Impact as well.
Bulldog and Pillman were the Hart Foundation in MLW. Obviously, Harry Smith. Obviously, what's his name? Teddy Hart's not going to get a job.
No.
But Brian Pillman and Harry Smith, great together. I hope he's in AEW real soon. And I can't believe they let him go.
So let's move on to another one, which I feel is just utterly bizarre considering recent events. B-Fab. So Hit Row were recently drafted to WWE SmackDown as the foursome, obviously. She appeared in a few segments with them during their debut. They're coming into the ring in a backstage segment, and then she's gone. Hit Row's now 3-piece, and I would say I only saw obviously a few matches because I think she only ever had a few matches on the promotions itself, like televised at the very least. And
yeah, she did like a no DQ with Elektra Lopez.
Yeah, and she wasn't. I don't think she was super impressive in ring, but she had personality. She was a good character. She was a part of that act. And you don't have to be, as we're going to talk about with at least one other person on this thing, you don't have to be a top level wrestler to be a crucial part of an act in a wrestling promotion. Of course, WWE is not a wrestling promotion, but we can talk about that in many different ways. But
and look,
it's just utterly bizarre about the fact that they called up the entire act and they said, okay, one of them's got to go. Just it's left hand not talking to the right in so many instances.
I don't look, there's rumors, and I don't know if we'll ever find out any more about this, but it's rumored that some of these releases are linked to vaccination status. I don't know if any of the main roster cuts were linked to that, but to let go of B-Fab, let's just say they decided, oh, we don't want her. Why? Then why did you call up the act of Hit Row? Like, she sang the damn theme song. Have they changed the theme song yet?
I don't know.
Theme song covers
I think they don't. I think I saw someone at least tweet they don't in their theme music, they don't have the Hit Row thing at the start anymore.
Which was the whole thing that was over. Everybody I don't.
What are you saying? This company is like taking stuff that was over in like their previous iteration and then immediately ridding them when they get to the main roster?
I'm
that.
I'm saying now they're just doing it with zero shame. Like several of the names we're going to talk about here, they're just stripping them of everything with no shame. And again, I'm going to say this, and somebody asked about this on the investor call. Thank God, NXT's on USA. If you're going to just strip acts like that, put it back down to the network. And then when you call people up, there won't be so many expectations. NXT is on USA. How do you just do this? B-Fab was shocking. B-Fab is frustrating. An act that I think we can lump these two men together because they were. The Lucha House Party got cut.
Yep.
And Grand Metalik thanked Vince McMahon, said, thank you for granting me my release. I think he will at least wrestle Bryan Danielson on AEW Dark, if nothing else, because Bryan has wanted a match with this man since before he returned to wrestling. Lince Dorado, I'm sure will work the independents. I'm sure we'll be fine. He he said some very passionate things on social media. And, he's right. He did live his dream. He can say whatever he wants about it not being what he wanted it to be, but he did live his dream, and he should be proud for that. Both of them should, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like these two are both very talented workers. Grand Metalik in particular will find work easily, whether it's in Mexico or on the States. I feel like they'll both work PWG pretty often. I feel like they're that type of worker, but I feel like, they'll easily find work in Impact, AEW Dark, stuff like that. I don't think they're going to struggle for work. Grand Metalik's obviously already openly requested his release, so I feel like he's not too disappointed with this outcome. Lince Dorado, yeah, I feel like he'll find work pretty easily as well. So I don't have too many reservations about these two in terms of their release. It's another indication of like these two were two people brought in as part of the Cruiserweight Classic, and the Cruiserweights is something that Triple H seems, at least at the start of this year, we heard speculation and rumors going around about the fact that you really wanted to concentrate on the Cruiserweight division and rebuild that as part of just the NXT family and work on 205 Live. And yeah, and now Cruiserweights are being tossed in and out of the company as well, because they're now focusing on, you must be 6'2" tall, you must be at least 200 plus pounds or whatever and stuff like that. It's, again, they've gone a completely different direction, and these two don't fit into that mold.
Since you mentioned that, I do want to say Chris Van Vliet did an interview with Tony Nese, and Tony Nese talked about how different the vision of the Cruiserweights was for Triple H and Vince McMahon. And it is shocking, and it is, Triple H, again, wrestler, wanted to do an annual Cruiserweight tournament, wanted this to feel special, and now it's just being tossed aside again. And it's unfortunate, but with these two, it seemed like the writing was on the wall. And the last name that I have stuff to say about, but not an abundance of things, would be Oney Lorcan, because even though he's great, and he was in War Games, and he was in that great Pat McAfee stable, I just can't. Biff Busick already has work in WXW. He's going to go back to PWG. He's going to be fine. And he's awesome, and everybody knows it. WWE didn't want a guy like him. They've never done well with guys like him. They never did much with Regal or Dave Finlay or Dave Taylor. So this one, it sucks because he's great. But I guess the writing was on the wall with him as well.
Yeah, it was one of my favorite bell-to-bell wrestlers in the company. I feel like I love the way that he just threw himself into uppercuts and like wrestled with absolute abandon. The feud, which led to the formation of the team of Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch, was excellently done. It was a good part of a good like mini arc story in NXT, and then their quest to become the tag champions, eventually winning the tag team titles, having to unfortunately vacate them due to Danny Burch's injury, and then they never really picked up again after that. Yeah, it's disappointing, but I can't wait to see him absolutely tear it up on the independent circuit, because he is an absolutely awesome wrestler.
And I also see him going to Dark Wrestling Bryan Danielson.
I mean, Biff Busick is a much better name than Oney Lorcan. So yeah. he's got a better name now as well. And he's got himself over on Twitter too. I mean, he's got himself over to a larger fan base now with this journey. And he's got himself over on Twitter because he capitalizes everything that he says as well. And so yeah, again, it's another one that I feel has so much talent that he's not going to struggle to find work. But now we move on to, I think those were the names that were kind of, obviously still big deals, but like
B-Fab, still a big deal.
Yeah.
Lucha House Party, still a big deal. But now we get to the names where there's a lot of shit to say.
Well, let's start then. I think sticking with the NXT side of things as an NXT release, I want to talk about Ember Moon.
So they shit the bed with Ember Moon so bad. That girl probably lost her passion for wrestling. Let's just call it what it is.
Yeah. So Ember Moon, obviously former NXT Women's Champion. She was NXT Women's Tag Team Champion earlier this year as well. She wrestled. She was brought up to the main roster a couple of years ago after like a pretty successful run in NXT. Was basically unused for the most part. I feel like the most exposure she got was that she wrestled the SummerSlam match for the SmackDown Women's Championship against Bayley.
And the build to that was like literally just, hey,
I'm giving you an opportunity because you're here. You're here. You've never wrestled me before. Why don't you wrestle me at SummerSlam for the title? And everyone gave it the response that it was supposed to do for that sort of creative booking, which was nobody cared about that match.
And they
And
did a thing with her where I think Sonya Deville bullied her and knocked down her Switch or something. Like, Ember Moon, top tier talent. I am adamant that she needs to go to AEW. AEW struck gold with Ruby Soho. Ember Moon, Athena is one of those names as well. She's a talent that has been working for years. She's got experience. She's got a ton left in her career. They need to sign her up real quick.
yeah, I think that AEW should be the destination for her. My reservation is obviously the fact that she has incurred a number of injuries over the last few years, which have...
One of them chasing after the goddamn 24/7 championship.
I would say that it's kind of, just from my perspective as well, I still think she's a very good worker, but it has impacted her performance in the ring. And I think she was off a step in her final run in NXT. I just don't feel like she has the same dynamism that she once had. But
how much, like, we can't say how much of that is injury, how much of that is loss of heart.
No, absolutely. I feel like someone with her experience and her reputation behind her, AEW would be stupid not to at least broach the idea of signing. I think if Impact are interested, they should try and put in a good offer for her as well. And yeah, I feel like she'll be someone that finds work pretty easily. She'll probably go back to the Athena name. It seems like it's a good fit for her. And I feel like she'll have more of an opportunity to expose the character that she wanted to put onto Ember Moon, or what she envisioned for it, because it seems to be a case like, oh, if she's somewhat supernatural or something like that, she's coming to the ring with different contact lenses and has that kind of like very spooky but atmospheric entrance, and then she just wrestles like a wrestler. Like maybe she'll be able to delve a little bit more into the character work side of things going forward.
I'd like to see her get with Giancarlo, the guy who did the video for Ruby Soho. I'd like to see her have one of those vignettes. I hope it's not a prison break. Honestly, Ember Moon, and our fantasy draft has aired now. I can say this. I picked her up because I think she's fantastic. Like, I think Ember Moon is great. I think there are a lot of people talk about representation. She's somebody who fits that mold. I think she's a phenomenal worker, like well before Bianca Belair even started shining. Like, Ember Moon was there doing the work, and I think like she's so good. I can't believe they just over and over again drop the ball, and it's heartbreaking. And sticking with NXT releases and heartbreaking and drop the ball. How the hell do you release Taya Valkyrie? How do you take I guess Franky Monet? How do you take the former longest running Impact Wrestling Knockouts champion? How do you take a name that can easily go ahead and be a star on Monday Night Raw when Charlotte Flair went down with COVID? You could have easily said, here's Taya Valkyrie. You know her. If you don't know her, here's a quick backstory. How do you not say, here's, like, you need a female for the Miz and Morrison act. Here's John Morrison's real life wife. Like, there's so much that you can do with Taya Valkyrie, and there's so much that she has in her that I cannot believe they just said, it's been 4 months. Go away.
Yeah, so signed with the company in February of this year. She debuted in April. She's basically just had a few squash matches and then went away and for a little while came back as part of the Robert Stone brand, challenged for the NXT Women's Championship at the end of September, had her final match at the start of October. Yeah, it's been an absolute waste of time. This is really the only thing that you can really describe it as. Her signing, we all know how talented Taya Valkyrie is. Anyone that's watched Lucha Underground, anyone that's watched her time in Impact knows how talented she is, how much charisma she has, how good she is in the ring, all of that stuff. And the fact of the matter is that her tenure in WWE, as short as it has been just a year, or not even a year, but an amount of time just completely and utterly wasted. And she is another person that I feel, if she wants to go back to Impact, I feel like she could obviously make a big splash there, but if she wants something new, AEW should be, again, trying to snap her hand off to get her to join, because she has name value. That crowd will know who she is. They'll know what a big deal that she is. And she's someone who speaks fluent Spanish. So there's
Yep.
good like
Has a ton of history with AAA.
good international value there as well. So she could also work with AAA because they obviously have somewhat of a working relationship with AEW as well. So yeah, I feel like that's again another perfectly aligned thing. There's something I want to talk about the Franky Monet thing is the fact that reports again circulating that John Morrison found out about this through the internet rather than actually being told that his wife was being released.
Well, like, let's talk about this. WWE has not released a statement publicly saying that they fired these people. They released it. Obviously, you have to internally email people. You know, I believe Fightful Select reported some of the discrepancies in the emails, like the NXT email at least said we were still on their future endeavors. The WWE main roster email did not. Just like little things like that. But yeah, John Morrison finding out about this through the internet, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised in the least because they are on tour, so maybe he's not home. You know.
Well, even that as well, to release his wife while he's away, he's not even in the country, and so essentially she'll either have to call in or he finds out through the internet that that's happening or whatever. And yeah, it's really lousy business practice if that is what's actually the case. It's not the case. I mean, we've been releasing these people anyway, so close to Christmas as well. We can talk about that as well, but like,
with the case of some of them not even being able to work until February.
Yeah, it's just a case of just releasing all of them in the first place, and then not even having the common decency to like inform their loved ones or something, or loved ones that work in the same goddamn company.
Like, hey, we're gonna let go of Taya, or hey, we're gonna, like, what? Like, I can't get over the fact that, like, I was beating the drum of this chick can debut in the Royal Rumble. Like,
because we know how big a deal that she is, and people that know, and people that are actually like in the real wrestling bubble, know how good that she is and know her name value. And it's just a case of, I don't know what. It's almost a case of like, what are they looking for? And it seems like they don't want anybody who has been quote unquote tainted by independent promotions or other wrestling promotions. They're now like scrub all of that, unless you're certain people that have already like built up enough of a reputation for yourself within the company.
But it's weird because like Taya Valkyrie, before it was public that they were going to change NXT 2.0, and we started realizing, they're changing people's names again and stuff like that. Because when they debuted her as Franky Monet, that was one of the clear signs of, they're changing names again. And Taya Valkyrie was one of the names who 2 years ago would have just debuted in the Royal Rumble and been on SmackDown or Raw, because that was the philosophy just 2 years ago. And I just can't believe that they wasted her. They wasted a year of her life. They made her move. I mean, like, come on.
Yeah. Well, speaking of another complete waste of time, let's talk about Eva Murray.
So this one's weird because she was signed in 2019. Isn't there like rumors as far back as 2019 that she was signed?
It's Fightful at least reporting that she returned to the company, was re-signed with the company in October 2020.
Yeah,
so she's been with the company for a year, technically, like was being paid for the company for a year. She did actually re-debut in June as this the Evolution, and
gave us and changed Piper Niven's name.
Yeah, so she debuted as essentially the valet, but also working still as Doudrop, which then led to almost immediately their partnership leading into those having difficulties and then feuding. Eva Marie wrestled a couple of matches against Doudrop, and then that was the last we saw of her. And now she's gone. And again, it's just she came in to the company. They didn't decide to use her for the first 8 months that she was signed with the company. Then they do re-debut her. She comes back. She still can't work at all. So they decide, okay, the best thing we can do is keep putting her in the ring. And the crowd shits all over it because, of course, they do, because she can't work. You decide, okay, we're not going to play to her strengths, which is the fact that she does have charisma. She is clearly obviously a beautiful woman as well, and so we could do something with that again in a more character perspective. No, we're going to keep her in the ring. People are still going to hate it because she can't actually wrestle. And she had that awful match with Alexa Bliss at SummerSlam. She had 2 matches against Doudrop where she just put Doudrop over, and then she's out of the company. And again, it's just like if people are going with the idea that we are moving into a new divas generation of the women's talent, then why is she going?
Yeah, like, see, but that's the issue. I can't even say that for sure now, because why would you release Eva Murray and another name we'll talk about that didn't even get to debut on television, who literally got in the business wanting to be a diva?
Yeah, but it's just, it's another utterly bizarre situation where she's brought in and doesn't do anything of real note, and is immediately released a year afterwards, after only realistically 3 months of television. It's just
now, you got to put on, even if you don't like it, got to put on your maybe from a business perspective, they're like, all right, you're not worth what we're paying you. Let's just cut bait here.
So I'm not going to. I know, obviously, we talk about the fact of it's always a shame when someone loses their job and anything along those lines, but I'm not going to act like I'm super disappointed that Eva Marie's not with the company anymore, because she shouldn't have been re-signed in the first place. She can't work whatsoever.
Well, so, I think there's a place for that character.
Yeah, there is a place for it, but if you're not gonna use it,
yeah,
then there's no point of re-signing. And it's just a point of what was the creative real idea? It's like the one creative idea they had for her was to pair her with, let's face it, an overweight woman. An overweight woman, and just go like, okay, that's going to be the gimmick, is the fact that she's like the beautiful one, and she's going to be use this other person to actually win all her matches or to rise herself up the ladder. And they didn't even do that story, because 2 weeks in, they were already causing tension between the 2 of them. Like, what the?
Because they woke up and decided we should do a fat shaming gimmick. And then they were like, oh shit, we can't do a fat shaming gimmick. And they didn't know what to do, because the only thing they had in mind was, haha, we'll call the fat girl Doudrop, which is stupid, by the way, which is utterly stupid, by the way. But whatever, that's what they're doing.
And now she dances and does jazz hands to the ring and has really short matches. And yeah, it's just, again, Eva Marie's got on. I'm not going to say that I'm going to miss her too badly, but it's just, again, it's more, for me, the Eva Marie one is more just a case of real creative ineptitude and poor business practice overall. And then let's move on to, I mean, you already mentioned her in passing, but let's obviously talk about more of the package there. Karrion Kross and Scarlett Bordeaux, or just Scarlett as she was in WWE. But...
Okay, all right. Let's just talk. This is the weirdest fucking thing I have ever seen. This guy comes in to NXT with a meteoric push. He beats Keith Lee, who we're not done talking about, and for the NXT title within like 2 months of debuting, has a cool entrance, never gets to show it off in front of human beings. And then you call him up to the main roster. You have Jeff Hardy beat him in 2 minutes as the NXT champion. You take away his valet, who is his real life fiance, who, by the way, is in, by any stretch of the imagination, a perfect 10. You know, like, what was that? And then you fucking put him in a demolition helmet, and you have him do nothing with that, and then you fire him. And the funniest thing about that, you bothered to draft him.
Yeah, I mean, there is so much to be said about this one. Again, I feel like this is another of the clearest indications that this was a personal message sent to Triple H in the way that he did things. Because this was a guy who he championed more than anything else. Considering the fact that, and I've spoken about this in the podcast multiple times, I feel like Karrion Kross, I was a big fan of Killer Kross in the independent circuit and in Impact. I feel like he showed a lot. And then when he came to WWE NXT and was wrestling the people who were like the biggest names in the independent circuit, your Adam Cole, your Kyle O'Reilly, your Finn Balor's, people like that. It exposed him as a limited worker. But you can do stuff with a guy of that nature, and he can. And they obviously decided to overlook all of that, give him the whole presentation, give him Scarlett, and just rise him up to the top. He is someone who clearly Triple H had a lot of stock in, saw a lot of potential in, and then she's gone, he's gone. He brought up to the main roster, as you mentioned, immediately loses to Jeff Hardy and then gets 50-50 with Keith Lee. Well, he loses to Keith Lee, again, another person we'll talk about. But he just goes 50-50 with a lot of other people as well, taken off TV with the stupid gladiator helmet thing. And then they decide to do 2 vignettes that make him seem like he's the new Sean O'Hare. But that's just a case of like, and we'll talk about this again when we mention Keith Lee further down the line, of Vince McMahon taking what is the raw thing from NXT, which is what Karrion Kross was, and they say, yeah, I'm going to just take the body and not going to have any of the paraphernalia that was associated with it, any of the entrance, the girl, the gimmick, the look, the intensity, anything like that. None of the character stuff. I just want that body, and then I'll take that body and do what I want with it, which is fuck all. Or fuck all good anyway. And yeah, it was just an absolute hideous car wreck. And this should really fly in the face of all of those people that go like, oh, this is the trust the process. Oh, that loss to Jeff Hardy is the start of a story.
Yeah.
It's just like, genuinely, all of those people, fuck right off. Just stop even littering our timelines or littering the internet with your absolutely insane, not like nonsense ramblings that are based on absolutely nothing that you see in the TV. It's just the sense of someone who is just purely optimistic and just believes that, oh, because WWE is the biggest company in the world, they wouldn't do something like this, or oh, everyone just all they do is hate on WWE, and WWE's they treat WWE like they're arseholes and stuff like that. The reason they do it is because they're fuckers who earn hundreds of millions of dollars every single quarter, and then decide to just release people and have absolutely no idea what to use people, and use the same people. They cycle the same people over and over and over and over again, to the point where their entire product is as stale as it's ever been.
Oh, and I have so much more to say along those lines when we get to Keith Lee.
Yeah.
But Karrion Kross, look, poor Peter Rosenberg tweeted something in July regarding the loss to Jeff Hardy and trust the process, and that was brought back a lot on my timeline because people were like, "Oh, we still trusted the process." Like, it's fucking bizarre.
You're never going to change these people, these certain people that just like are always going to be the WWE fanboys or fangirls or anything like that. I mean, I made a stupid gimmick out of all of that. I'm not going to do it on this one because it feels disrespectful, but it's just a case of that's just what these people do. They'll see anything that WWE does negatively and will find the positive in it, or they'll just try and coat over everything. And at the end of the day, I'm happy in an extent that Kross and Scarlett are gone because they were being absolutely wasted.
So
they were wasted here. Kross will find plenty of work. He'll go to Bloodsport. He'll go to GCW and will be a big deal there. He'll go back to Impact. I'm sure AEW will at least give him a look. I don't know if he really fits into their style there, but they have shown in the past that they're a company that will promote the strengths and hide the weaknesses. So I can't say that that's going to be out of the question. Scarlett will find plenty of work. I mean, Scarlett will find plenty of work in and out of wrestling. So like, she's
already talking about like starting a clothing line and magazine covers
and OnlyFans.
And she wants to do a hardcore bra and panties match. And I think some promotions have like actually reached out about that, maybe. But
those two will be stars of GCW.
They'll be stars of anything. Like they could go. I don't know if they'll go back to Impact because the ending there
that was a lot of that was apparently associated with Don Callis and Don Callis.
That's true, and he's not there anymore. So there is that. So
I think New Japan would give him a look, certainly, just because of his pure presence.
Right, and I think they're gonna be fine.
Yeah,
but it
absolutely.
is. I know a lot of times in these podcasts I tend to bring up Hunter But I do genuinely wonder, like, what is this guy thinking? Is he just like, you know, okay, I lost? Because I'm sure that's an idea that has to cross someone's mind when a lot of the projects that you specifically were working on, it's just, I lost.
Well,
I
well,
tweeted out a picture. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, well, that's why I don't feel like it's now a crazy assertion for people to make that Triple H might walk out of WWE at some point. That's something that I want to talk about when we get to kind of the end of it, but I might as well bring it up now because it's only this is like terrible timing in terms of releasing all these talents, and we'll talk about it more at the end and stuff like that. But in terms of like the Ring of Honor departure, but I have like wild speculation and stuff like that. Not speculation, but it's just like what I would kind of hope to see happening. But we can talk a bit more about that when we've finally listed all of them, because there's, funnily enough, there's still names that we need to talk about.
And there's still like big names that we need to talk about.
Yeah. Well, we've already mentioned him, and so but we'll bring these two together because again, they come as obviously they weren't packaged together on TV, but they are a real life package. That's Keith Lee and Mia Yim, obviously a real life couple, real life fiancés.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
So, yeah.
By the way, Mia Yim never more spotlighted on TV than when she was actually paired with Keith Lee during the pandemic against the Garganas.
Yeah.
And
but
yeah,
this is again, it's two absolutely bizarre ones in completely different ways. So Mia Yim did not wrestle a single match on TV in the entirety of 2021.
Yep.
And she was originally she was obviously originally in NXT, and she was a pretty big deal there. She never won the NXT Women's Championship, but she was fairly well positioned. They brought her up in the main roster as part of the absolutely abominable Retribution stable. She was Reckoning. She didn't really do too much in general. She wrestled a couple of matches, but nothing significant. She left the group as part of everyone else when they all turned on to Mustafa Ali. And then she was drafted, or she was supposedly on SmackDown, but then wasn't. And then she was drafted to Raw?
Raw.
Yeah. So then she was drafted to Raw. Never made an appearance on either of those shows, apparently being part of the roster on both of them. And then she's gone. And just like, what?
By the way, another one they bothered to draft. Why?
Yeah. And again, it's just something else that Webfetches does like. This is one that AEW must prioritize. Absolutely must prioritize. If they are like, they want to build up their women's division and they want to address the supposed issues revolving around inclusivity, Mia Yim is an absolute must get. Like, she needs to be there, and she should just be there based on the strength of her talent alone. She is an excellent wrestler. She has a ton of experience, and she would be an absolute coup for that women's roster.
Another one, Hunter. Like, they did a video of Hunter telling her, "Hey, we're gonna sign you. You're great," and she cried, and like, it's so frustrating. And I'm not usually this guy, right? But I do want to point out that the only members of the abomination that was Retribution that were released were the females. And like, they were all failures in that regard, right? Why?
Well, the whole gimmick was a failure.
Yeah, so if the whole gimmick was a failure, why were those the only two that you said, we have no use for you? Why do you have no use for me again? How do you have no use for...
Again, that's the bigger question in general. Like, for a lot of these sites, like, how do you not have a use for so-and-so? Because you're creatively inept and you shouldn't be running a wrestling company anymore.
And I'll just say right now, Sean Ross Sapp tweeted, get ready for a lot of... They never really had a lot of creative plans for so-and-so based on the stories that I'm hearing. Why are you hiring them? Like, in some ways it almost goes, well, are we supposed to say, well, good on you for firing them because you realized that you were the ones that made the mistake in hiring them? But, like, you're still fucking with people's lives. And by the way, speaking of fucking with people's lives, talk about the fact that Keith Lee missed half of this year because he had COVID and wasn't sure if he did too much physical exertion, if he would just up and die. And then he comes back and then you fucking package him as Bearcat.
Well, I mean, this is the biggest for me, indication of the creative ineptitude and the fact that how do you not do something with so and so? Keith Lee is someone who is a physical phenomenon, not someone of his size, his build, to do all the stuff that he can do in the ring. And he got super over on the independent circuit, and he got super over on NXT. Became the first join NXT and North American champion in the company's history, and it was a huge, huge deal. Like, everyone loved Keith Lee, and they loved his entrance, they loved his aura, his personality. He had everything that you could possibly want from a top guy. And they had him come to the Royal Rumble that one time, and he stared down Brock Lesnar.
You know who else who loved Keith Lee? Brock Lesnar.
Brock Lesnar looked at him across the ring and said, "Who's this big motherfucker?" And I want
to fight this guy.
Yeah. You had a ready-made feud for Keith Lee to eventually work his way towards. What happens is that he comes up to the main roster. He is immediately thrown into the feud. He gets a big win over Randy Orton, and so you just feel like, okay, now we're getting going. And then it just never builds from there. And then you hear all these stories. Obviously, the COVID thing is a big situation as well. So obviously, let's mention that. But the fact that apparently he needs to work like a big man. I don't like his entrance. He needs new entrance music. He needs to wear a fucking skirt to the ring. Needs to wear a fucking skirt to the ring. We need to wear a t-shirt because we don't want his flabby body being displayed or anything like that.
You know what's wild though? The last Survivor Series, in front of human beings, he was spotlighted at the very end with Roman Reigns. And they had a great back and forth. And Roman Reigns does the fist bump. And it's literally, you knew what you had. There is no fucking excuse. You knew what you had. You just decided that you didn't want it because somebody woke up. I don't know if it was Vince or Bruce or whoever, or Nick Khan. Somewhere along the line, they woke up and just said, we don't want anything that we're doing. We want completely, let's just hit the restart button. Let's be a legacy brand and try to build people who have never seen wrestling or done wrestling into maybe convincing them that they can be The Rock or Hulk Hogan. That has to be what it is. Because how do you take a fucking specimen like Keith Lee and go, yeah, we'll just release you then? I don't get it. And again, there must be something more to this because he was just on your TV show. You know what I mean? Some of these things don't add up. You can say Lucha House Party. Okay, they were floundering for years. Okay, I understand that. The Grand Metalik wanted out. Keith Lee, you were actively Bearcat. You were actively trying to do something with Keith Lee over and over and over again.
But this is the same company that a few months ago released Malachi Black just as he was about to re-debut.
Yeah, because they just as he did re-debut, he ended SmackDown, and then the week later he was fired.
Yeah, because they don't have. Again, it's just they don't have. There's no forward planning. Clearly, they're just we have Keith Lee, so we'll use him. But then we decided, okay, now we're going to get rid of him. It's just again no continuity, no bonds between the people at the very top that are actually making the business and financial decisions and the creative teams below as well. There has been there has been reports out there by Ringside News, again, take with a pinch of salt, that Keith Lee had an attitude problem backstage. Then again, if I was going through so many creative changes and having my entire identity as previously as a wrestler being stripped away from me, I'd probably be pretty creatively frustrated as well.
Well, look, now Ringside News again, grain of salt. I think Keith Lee is a sweetheart. I think by all accounts, from what anything anybody's ever said, is that he's a sweetheart. I think if he didn't have an attitude problem, maybe it's because, hey, you're fucking with my livelihood, and it does get tiring. You know, Keith Lee should have been the main eventer of WrestleMania. I think last year, was it last year? Or maybe even this year, there was a rumor that the main event of Mania was going to be Lee, McIntyre, and Lesnar. Like, they clearly knew what they had. I don't want to hear that shit. Well, it's his own fault, pal. He didn't learn how to work. It's bullshit. And if you're really looking for people to work like King Kong Bundy in 2021, then you're wrong. It's King Kong Bundy, look, had his place. Andre the Giant had his place. Nowadays, if a big dude can do backflips, we want to highlight that and embrace that. And that shouldn't be a damn issue. I can't believe we're talking about Keith Lee getting released. And I have a theory that that's why they haven't plugged Survivor Series yet. Because you got to do 5-on-5s, and they didn't know who they were going to put on the teams because they didn't know who they were going to have.
There is obviously a good chance that's the case. Keith Lee again should be someone that AEW prioritizes.
Yeah, Keith Lee medium need to go.
Yeah, this is and I don't want to say it should be all about, like, obviously a big proponent of inclusivity and stuff like that, but this is the African American bona fide main event style that your brand needs.
Yeah, he's coming to you. He's coming to you gift wrapped.
Yeah, and they'll let him be Keith Lee. They'll let him be Keith Lee as much as he can be. Obviously, again, notwithstanding the stuff that happened with COVID, if he's feeling he's back to his best and he's ready to start being who he was before, or he needs to adapt slightly. But either way, he's got like buckets of charisma and insane power and all this stuff as well. So I think that he will slot perfectly into AEW. So that's someone who they absolutely should prioritize signing. But we're down to the final name finally after just about an hour or so. But let's talk about probably the most high profile release out of all of them, just based on both their accolades they received throughout their time in WWE and just how they were positioned and how they were booked throughout their entire WWE run, is Nia Jax. So, former Raw Women's Champion, been with the company since 2014, former WWE Women's Tag Team Champion.
Was literally
start of the year.
A big part of Monday Night Raw all year long. Was always at the forefront. Like, she's been in several WrestleMania Championship matches.
Unbelievably protected.
Yeah, so and is somehow gone.
Yeah, so there's a lot to kind of unpack here a little bit because of stuff that's come out since the release, or stuff surrounding it. We mentioned beforehand as well, you mentioned earlier that a lot of the releases, there was speculation that a lot of the releases were due to, or at least a number of the releases was due to COVID-related stuff. Nia Jax has openly said on Instagram that she believes that God is her immune system, or something to that effect, or God gave her immune system. And so it's quite clear to me, at least from that perspective, that she is an anti-vaxxer. And so she did not get vaccinated, or she was at least talking about when, at least in 2020, that she was not going to get vaccinated. And that could have been problematic for her. She was recently written off TV to take some time off.
Like, legitimately, the New York Post openly said Nia Jax was released. One of the reasons is because she was unvaccinated. Now, Nia Jax...
Yeah, we need to talk about this a little bit. So
did release a statement, which makes it all the more heartbreaking. Nia Jax went on Instagram and posted a statement saying, and I'm just going to read it verbatim, so bear with me. I usually keep my personal life private, but yesterday's reports leave me with no option but to clarify matters. I recently took a short leave of absence from WWE for a mental health break. I've been working through so much, more than I can share, and so I took some time with the full support of the company to take care of myself. Earlier this week, after WWE sent me my schedule to return to the ring for the November 15th show, I asked for an extension to my mental health break, feeling that I needed more time and hoping that I would have the ongoing support of the company I have given my all to for the past 7 years. I didn't receive a response. The next I heard, I was being released. My vaccination status was never mentioned. I wasn't given any choices or options. It breaks my heart to be so abruptly let go without consultation when dealing with so much privately. I love my career at WWE. I love the men and women I worked with, and I'm going to need the time to process this huge loss. I appreciate those people who have shown compassion and understanding during an incredibly difficult time.
Yeah, so
she's pretty much saying that no, like, as far as her vaccination status, it was never questioned. But also, releasing someone during a mental health break is fucking shitty.
Yeah, I have no reason to dispute what Nia Jax is saying about when she was released, because of the fact that I kind of seem to have an inkling about how this company operates. And so it feels like, yeah, they would release her while she's taking this mental health break, that she was asked for an extension, didn't get a response, and then was immediately seemingly released off the back of it. I mean, you hear all of the story. We've heard stories in the past about the heat that she's received because she's been often viewed as dangerous in the ring. And
then it's like, you read these responses, and they're all from coworkers. Tyson Kidd saying, one of my favorites of all time. Thank you for everything. Mike Rome saying, I love you. If you need anything, I'm here. Deanna Purrazzo saying, thinking of you. Mojo Rawley saying, love you, my friend. I'm here if you need anything. Very proud of your career. Alexa Bliss, love you. Charlotte Flair just posted some broken heart emojis. Iconics with some heart emojis. Kayla Braxton, I love you. You're a star in 20,000 ways. So, like, you're just telling people, hey, yeah, your friend no longer works here randomly. And just, again, not making a public statement. Just being like, oh, by the way, if you're that kid who loved Nia Jax, who loved Keith Lee, they're just not around anymore. And if you're not someone who is on the internet, you'll never really know why, because they didn't even say, hey, we released so-and-so.
Yeah, so that's probably the most shocking.
That's the most shocking release.
Yeah, just because of how she was positioned and it just seemingly coming out of nowhere.
For me, it's her, Bray Wyatt, and Braun Strowman as the three most shocking releases this year.
And again, I've always had kind of a negative perspective towards Nia Jax. Again, it's always the thing about, like, I don't want to see anyone like lose their job or anything like that. But I'm not going to like backtrack and say that I'm unhappy that she's released to a degree. I'm unhappy, obviously, seemingly the position that she went through, and if she is struggling with like mental health, like things that are affecting her mental health right now, then obviously I hope that she continues to get the help and support she needs. And this clearly is not the help and support that she needs at this point in time. And hopefully she can work through this and does get other opportunities moving forward. I can't say that I'm super clamoring to see her back in a wrestling ring, but again, if she is able to find work with, I'm sure Impact at the very least will give her a look because of her name value and the fact that she could be a big part of that women's division as well.
This is a woman who, been featured at WrestleMania, won the World Championship at WrestleMania.
I think promotions should definitely, if she's still keen on working outside of WWE, they should be giving her a look because of just that reputation surrounding her as well. I personally don't want to see her go to AEW just because of the fact that I don't think that she is a particularly safe worker. I don't feel like she would have too much benefit on that division because you already have Nyla Rose, who kind of fills into that role, slots into her role pretty well. And
I don't think she'd go to AEW, but if she does choose to wrestle again, I hope she finds success, and I hope she's like, whatever she's going through first and foremost, I hope clears up. But really, this is so shocking. Like, nobody's safe anymore.
No, absolutely. And it's just a case of, for all of these people, all the 18 people that we've mentioned, I hope they all like land on their feet and they're able to find work in whatever format is, whether it's in pro wrestling or outside of it going forward, and able to take this setback in stride and move on. I'm sure many of them don't see this as a setback, but more as a unlocking of the cage that was surrounding them or anything like that. So yeah, I feel like there's a lot of talent out of the people. I mean, out of these ones, it's almost bizarre in the sense of how much talent has just been released. And not just talent in terms of just the name talent, but actually just unbelievably good wrestlers and talkers and personalities.
Well, let's talk about this because it's 12:40 on Saturday, November 6th. At 12 p.m., Taya Valkyrie tweeted, "I'll say this. The hardest thing for me to process after being released is realizing the amount of people that lied to me. Some of y'all should be ashamed." And that's like, I can't imagine the amount of emotions that is going through all these people right now. It sucks. And if I'm Taya Valkyrie, if I'm, Nia Jax, all the way down the line, like even if I'm Jessie Kamia, like this just hurts. And this sucks.
And what I'm going to rope this in quickly before we get into a bit more of a because I know there's loads more news that we need to go through as well, but I want to talk about this before we move away from this subject entirely, which is Kyle O'Reilly's situation, which is Kyle O'Reilly's NXT contract is supposedly set to expire in December.
Yep.
So that adds on to the fact that Johnny Gargano's contract is set to expire towards the end of the year as well, and Kevin Owens, unless he's re-signed, his contract will.
I don't.
Yeah. His contract is set to expire in at least at this point, is set to expire at the end of January.
Yeah.
So those are three core components of both NXT and the main roster. Three people that obviously have huge ties to Ring of Honor and the independent circuit in the past. Three people who have kind of redone everything that they can do under the WWE banner or NXT banners, as what you say. Other than Kyle O'Reilly, obviously never winning the NXT championship, but he's clearly not someone, based on just who's been released in the past and who's been prioritized in NXT. He's someone who doesn't fit that mold, and he's been used to prop up Von Wagner at the moment. And he's someone absolutely that I am 100% confident will leave and will join AEW.
Yeah, because I've said this on every podcast because I feel this way. The Undisputed Era was the hottest act in all of NXT, which when the Undisputed Era was the hottest act, NXT was the hottest brand. From a fan perspective, I don't think that's a stretch to say. Now, I do think that Tony Khan should be signing all the members of the Undisputed Era as a flex. Straight up, as a flex, you should be like, this was your hottest act, and now they all work here. But Johnny Gargano is the one name of the three I'm not sold will leave, but I think he should, and I think ultimately he probably will, but he is a big WWE guy. Maybe if they can promise him a Rey Mysterio role, a Shawn Michaels role, maybe they get to keep him.
Yeah, but as it stands right now, that's three other big names that would end up leaving the company soon. And this is the big talking point that I want to mention off the back of this now before we get into any other news stories. So it's a weird time wrestling in the fact that the amount of free agent talent. So WWE over the past of the last 2 years has released over 100 wrestlers.
Just wrestlers, yeah.
Yeah, just wrestlers. And this is now coming at a time where Ring of Honor is about to go into hiatus, and based on the fact that another news story that broke out this week is the Sinclair Broadcasting Group is millions in debt, and so that makes it adds a little bit more fuel to the fire that this hiatus for Ring of Honor might be the end of the company as a whole, or at least the end of the company under Sinclair Broadcasting, unless they can find a buyer. And so we're now in this weird dynamic where you obviously have WWE, which is still the pillar of the industry, AEW, which has risen leaps and bounds in the last couple of years and is now in some degrees competitive with WWE from just a television perspective. And it's signed a lot of talent from WWE that have been released and built up their own stars. But then there is this massive gap between you take a massive fall from that point, and then you hit GCW, Impact Wrestling, other independent promotions like PWG, stuff along those lines, MLW, NWA. NWA is now like on a cliff, like falling down that level at this point. But
Yeah.
there's now this massive gulf between AEW and the next string. And obviously, probably in that little gap in between, you probably would put New Japan, but obviously New Japan is not US based, so it can't really do too much in that regard. But you have New Japan Strong, but New Japan Strong is probably close to the level of an Impact or MLW or something to that effect. So what I would hope for, and this goes against Tony's merging concept entirely, I wish above anything else that there was another billionaire out there or another person with links to all these other like links to television companies, stuff that says like AEW has proven that wrestling can still be hot. They're on Wednesdays and WWE have Mondays, Tuesdays and Fridays right now. That Thursday slot could be an interesting opportunity if we want to take it. And we now have over 100, probably even over 200 wrestlers out there in free agency right now that have name value, that have talent, that have a lot of potential that we could bring in and we could launch our own Phoenix promotion off the back of it.
It is possible.
And I'd say, I don't know whether there is anybody out there that's doing it, but you know what? Again, it's just something that I would love in my own just like fantasy world where someone just goes, okay, we can start this up. Let's get this, see if we can get this going within the next year, and let's bring Triple H on board and have Triple H take down his own father or go up against his own father-in-law and prove that if his approach is actually better than WWE's.
I mean, I would love to see it.
Bring Shawn Michaels with him.
Yep.
Take Road Dogg and anyone else, but behind the scenes take William Regal with him.
It would be so great to see.
But I just feel like there's such a gap in the market that needs to be filled with what Ring of Honor should have been, the position that Ring of Honor should have been in. But a company that does have, obviously not to the same level, but does have television exposure, does have a big corporation on top of them and stuff like that to manage things. That should be the gap that they're filling right now. A solid number 3 in the pro wrestling landscape. We don't have an ECW right now. GCW is probably the closest we have, but even they are miles off where ECW was by the time they at their peak. And maybe this will obviously lead to what I can only imagine is a big boom for the independent wrestling industry, and maybe one of them catches fire and is able to launch up to that level. I think GCW and Impact are probably the most placed, but Impact has the stigma associated with it, which I think will always keep it down a peg. I mean, what do you kind of envision? What do you kind of hope for with all these new wrestlers in free agency? Because it's just the realistic approach is to take that they can't all be signed with AEW.
It really depends. Like I'd like to see somebody at Anthem, which owns Impact, be like, okay, what can we do to try and take this to the next level? Because now there really is a spot that needs to be filled. There really is a need for a C promotion. You know, GCW is great. They are making moves, but I don't think deathmatch wrestling is sustainable for like a television promotion. So if we do want like a third TV promotion, I'd like to see it happen through one of the means that's already there, like an Impact, or I'd like to see merging in the sense that like they all agree, okay, we can become something bigger if we consolidate and become something better. You know, I'd like to see MLW get there, but I'd like to see some of these talents, especially like the Karrion Kross, become linchpins for a C promotion, because not everybody can go to AEW, and there are a few that I think need to, but the lot that don't, I really think that they should still find their way on TV. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, and for me, it's just like bad timing is the fact that there is now all this stuff is happening as soon as Ring of Honor decide that pretty much call it quits, or at least temporarily.
which is a crazy story as well. Like Ring of Honor, 20 years. They're pretty much, a lot of people believe that they're folding.
And yeah, that'd be a massive shame as well. And we really need someone to fill in that slot just below WWE and AEW. And I'm not saying like they're a solid C promotion or anything like that, but like someone who can take this enormity of talent and do something themselves with it. It's just because I just don't feel like you can't put all these on AEW because there's just too many people, and they'll fall into the same trap that WWE did, which is you have all this talent and have no idea what you can do with them, and people just won't be used as often. And then, so there needs to be that slot. There needs to be a new Ring of Honor, is all I'm saying really at this point in time. And hopefully someone is at least having the wheels turning on potentially being that, whether it is Impact or GCW deciding, okay, we need to reach up to the next level, or someone else entirely saying, okay, there's a spot in the market here and there's so much talent out there, let's see what we can do with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's I mean,
but I mean that all almost ties into the fact that Sean Rossett on Fightful Select shared a wonderful story this week that Vince McMahon doesn't like Bray Wyatt, or grew to dislike Bray Wyatt because he was creatively frustrated. What the fuck? Like, this is what I was saying when we were talking on the 10-year anniversary show about, I don't mind the way that Charlotte Flair is behaving, because not everybody can be the Miz and just be like, oh, I'm just so gosh darn happy with whatever spot they put me in. Because you're going to tell me that Bray Wyatt was a money-making machine, and that is proven. And you're going to release him just because you're like, but he's not playing ball very well. The fuck is that?
Yeah, I mean, first, again, it falls back to this rumor surrounding Keith Lee and stuff like that. It's just a case of, you can't really blame people for being creatively frustrated right now at a time where WWE is seemingly creatively bankrupt. And so if he was pitching ideas and they weren't being receptive to, then yeah, of course he's going to be frustrated. He's going to, and he's one of those people that seems that he's fine airing those frustrations, and that must be the thing that Vince was upset about. The fact that this is a guy who actually just won't fall in line and just get on with it.
But
like the people that I do want to push. It's
so weird because there's also all the stories of Vince McMahon holding talent meetings, you know, intentionally literally stepping on the toes of talent to see if they'll actually stand up for themselves.
And but then he openly then talks about the stuff like that, stuff on the Stone Cold podcast where he talks about people not wanting to reach out for that brass ring or not willing to push themselves the way that talent used to do. And then when someone actually does it, it's like, oh yeah, well, I don't like you now, and you're frustrating, and so you're going to be out of a job soon. It's such a double crazy. Standard.
And I wish Tony was here, because part of this Fightful Select report says there was never an actual intended payoff for the Randy Orton Bray Wyatt angle. And Tony beat that drum on this podcast for like 7 months. And how do you have an angle run from Survivor Series through WrestleMania and say, well, we never had a real end game for that? What is your job? Like, what are you doing? How do you not have an end game? Now, there is also, I want to get the side of the writer. Like, are they not coming up with end games anymore because they're just like, everything's going to change at the drop of a hat anyway? Why bother? It's right now. I mean,
it seems like just a lot of a mess backstage.
This era is going to one day, whenever they figure it all the fuck out, it's going to be talked about in the same way that 1995 is talked about, if not worse than, because they are just a mess right now. And the weird thing is, they're making record profit.
Yeah. So that's that thing with this Q3 earnings call they released, said that they have made 200 and $55.8 million revenue for the third quarter, which is slightly lower than the second quarter. But to put it in perspective, over in like 2001, obviously if you want to go back and listen to stuff about that, there's obviously 2001 A Wrestling Odyssey over on the Smark YouTube channel and podcast feeds. But I mentioned the fact that like through that entire year of 2001 or 2000, when they were at the absolute hottest, they were making about $450 million for the year. They're now making over half of that for one quarter.
Yeah.
And relate that back to the fact that every single talent release was sent the internal message with the reason for their release being budget cuts. Now, I'm not going to be one of those people that sort of talks about the fact that, like, because they're making record profits, the budget cut things is bullshit, because
they might have a legitimate budget.
Well, I imagine that they're trying to cut their talent budget, so that's the part of it. But it's just a case of this company just continues to thrive in spite of itself. It feels like,
which
it flies in the face of all. I don't say all logic, but it's just a case of, like, as you mentioned earlier, they're a legacy brand, and they survive on the fact that they get these huge TV deals from Fox and USA, and that's their big, like, cash cow. That's the thing they're riding on for the next few years at the very least. And they are considered the heavyweights in their industry because they've been there for so long, and until AEW came around, there's been no real standout competition. And so they can keep doing decisions like this, and people can keep bemoaning it and calling them out on their bullshit. But at the end of the day, they're still going to be the top name, and they're still going to get the millions of people tuning in and stuff like that, because that's just the way that it is until it's not. And we don't know when that not's going to be, or if it is ever going to come along.
It's so strange to me that they're just like, yeah, we're doing great. Oh, by the way, Survivor Series is one of our tentpole events. And they're not doing a fucking thing to build up Survivor Series. There are 2 weeks left for a show that is being held in Brooklyn, New York. And it's one of the tentpole events. And they're like, yeah, no, we're not doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing what they can get away with. They don't even have to try anymore. It's really unfortunate, and I feel really bad for the people who are thriving in this era, like the Drew McIntyres and stuff like that, because as we all know, as you've said during some of the fantasy booking, you don't see Brett and Sean as top guys because they're top guys in a middling era. Drew McIntyre is forever going to have that stench, where it's like, he was a top guy, but that was during the era where they were in a Thunderdome and they were just releasing people left and right. So, yeah, he was a top guy. That's because they released Bray Wyatt. That's because they didn't have Brock Lesnar. That's, like, I feel bad for those that are thriving just as much as I do for those that are losing their jobs, because they are thriving in a place where, admittedly, nobody wants to be anymore. People are openly talking about how even the independent circuit is thriving to a point where it feels more fresh and more rewarding than being in WWE. Matt Cardona is as over as he's ever been, if not more so. And he's just wrestling an Impact and GCW. You know, I feel bad for everybody.
Yeah, I also feel bad for a number of people who in the WWE offices that lost their job during these round of cuts as well, because I probably should mention those ones as well. So a number of people in primarily seemingly Stephanie McMahon's team have been released, including Senior Vice President of Creative Services, Stan Stansky, which is just a ridiculous name. I just had to put that out there.
That's a great name.
Senior Vice President of Global Marketing, Beth Davis. Vice President of Branding, Laura Petricelli. Vice President of Partnership Marketing, Laura Todd. Senior Vice President of Global Marketing and Sales Strategy, John Stamatis. And talent sales and global partnership, member of the talent sales and global partnerships department, Mike Giacco, a previous 24/7 champion.
Yeah,
and
he pinned R-Truth. I think R-Truth stumbled backstage.
Yeah,
That's
and
really cool
also saw the official departure of Christina Salen, who was the
who was on the fucking call. The call.
Yeah, so she was a chief financial and administrative officer, but she's been released and has been replaced by who was the Frank A. Riddick III, who was the interim role at that point, but is now fully in that role. So
that's so weird.
Yeah, but yeah, so there's been a lot of releases behind the scenes, as well as like in the offices of WWE, as well as the main talent as well. So again, this is the whole. I think there should be more memes of Nick Khan as Thanos doing the snap, essentially.
Yeah, by the way, Stephanie McMahon during that call. Oh, we see our superstars like they're part of the Marvel universe, and so many people posted the snap. Yeah, so many people were like, "Yep, snap."
No, wasn't there one point, because I'll tie this into this as well, because I believe at one point during that earnings call, Stephanie said something like, "Oh, we've got some bad news."
Yep. Mm-hmm.
The Miz was eliminated from Dancing with the Stars this week.
Can you imagine?
I'm glad that's the bad news that she's joking about. She is now striking me, and I've always heard these stories about, and I know I've said things in the past about Stephanie McMahon, but I always hear stories about how everyone loves her behind the scenes and she's such a sweetheart and everything like that. But saying things like that, she comes across such a callous bitch.
It's not like so, and her face is used for some of these memes, so it's kind of appropriate. But like, she is the embodiment of that. I also want to say Karen, but like she'll look the embodiment of like that rich, successful Karen that thinks she's like doing the world a favor, like philanthropy is the new marketing. Like she thinks, oh, but I am so caring, and even if she is, she comes across as so disingenuous. And
she's a perfect poster child for professional wrestling because she comes across so fake.
She really does, and I feel bad because maybe she's just oblivious to it, but she comes across so fucking disingenuous, and it's terrible.
Yeah, I guess considering who her father is, it's not like the apple hasn't fallen too far from
Vince
the tree.
Vince comes across more genuine than she does, though.
Yeah, but I think that's because I feel like there is part of her, or at least there is I think there is a genuine attempt of her to try and move things forward and be progressive and really change things, but she does it in such a way which seems like she's got the mixture of like she wants to impart changes, she wants to improve things, and she does have some genuinely good ideas and concepts and wants to see the progression of especially women in all forms of business and professional wrestling. But then she goes about it in such a way which is just so Vince McMahon in terms of make it all about her, use it as an opportunity to market themselves and market how great they are. So it comes across so disingenuous. So even if she is attempting to do things in a real genuine attempt of like making improvements and making benefits and doing the right thing, because it's all swathed in that corporate bullshit, it's so hard to even tell whether she's actually being genuine or not.
And this is why I think Vince comes across more genuine than she does, because I think Vince is of a time where you still needed to have a genuine likability about you. Whereas Stephanie, I think, comes across and really thrives in this era of like, oh, we have to treat corporations like families, and you know that it doesn't work. Like people see through it. You know what I mean? And
it's possible not to at this point.
Yeah, I just feel so bad for her because I genuinely think that she genuinely thinks she's, you know, oh, I got some bad news to report. The Miz was let go by Dancing with the Stars, and her demeanor on these calls has made it even worse because it's like the character that says she invented women's wrestling turned up to 12. You know, like it's too much. Oh my God, could you imagine this football player driving a pure life truck into an arena? No, but you can do that in WWE because we have all the scripted structure of a great movie and all the great action. It's so like, oh, I don't buy what you're saying because it sounds like you're trying to sell me something.
Yeah. So that's a lot of the. I mean, talk about the Miz being eliminated. I mean, obviously he has been he has left the show now. When did he finish actually? So
it came down to Miz and JoJo for this week. JoJo Siwa is, huge star for the younger demographic. Miz is great, and look, I think the Miz is fantastic, and it's for all the reasons why I said that not everybody should be a Miz. Why I'm surprised this company hasn't pushed him further, because he's legitimately the best, poster child and corporate, hey, go here, go there, and he can do it all, and do it all with a Hollywood smile. I'm surprised they don't do more with him, but he seems like he's a nice guy. I get the feeling that if put in a room with him and Stephanie, Miz is probably a more likable guy. You know what I mean? That's just the vibe I get.
No, yeah, there's nothing. I don't think there's anything wrong with the Miz personality and stuff like that. It's just I'm quite disappointed of him being eliminated because it means he's going to be back on TV soon, and that's.
Do you think they put him with John Morrison in that feud, or do you think they just they'll put him against anybody just because it doesn't matter anymore?
Honestly, I think they're going to give him a dancing gimmick.
Oh, God, I hope not.
I think they will. I think they'll have him appear, and they'll have they'll see if they can get his dance partner to appear alongside him for a little bit as well, and they'll make that part of his character now that let's say, I learned a few things on Dance with Stars, then part of in wrestling matches you can do some sort of moves and stuff like that to avoid people and things like that.
I hate it. You're so right. Fandango has talked about he thinks he's given a dancing gimmick just so that Vince McMahon could fuck with Chris Jericho for doing Dancing with Stars.
Again, nothing would surprise me at this point. So, talk about there's another release to talk about, but not on the WWE side of things. Tom Lawler has left MLW, and I know you've been a big advocate of him joining AEW.
Man. Yeah, the Minneapolis street fight at Full Gear needs to end with Tom Lawler getting Dan Lambert out of the walls of Jericho and dragging Dan Lambert on top of the Jericho and letting Dan Lambert pin Chris Jericho. That is what I would do, because Tom Lawler is great. He needs to be in a bigger company, and I think this is the perfect entryway for him to do it.
Yeah, I think that he's obviously a guy with a lot of talent. He's doing work with New Japan Strong as well. But yeah, I feel like now he's out of his contract with MLW. I feel now's the time for him to take a step up, and AEW seems like it would be a good ground for him to work on. I don't know if that's necessarily he'll be directly joining as part of this American Top Team angle, but it'll be a perfect catalyst for it.
Yeah, and I think, look, even if you don't want to do that, you need to do something with Tom Lawler and AEW because he needs to be there.
Got a few injury notes as well. Zoey Stark is to undergo knee surgery, or has undergone knee surgery. I don't know whether she's.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, so she suffered an injury during the Scareway to Hell ladder match, and yeah, so that's it's unfortunate. She's been pushed pretty heavily as part of the tag team with Io Shirai, and now she'll have to take some time on the sidelines. Hopefully, she has a swift recovery and comes back better than ever. There's also a couple of injuries over more on the independent or Ring of Honor side of things, or at least what Ring of Honor's got left. Had Mance Warner. So they both suffered injuries during a NGW Tennessee event. So Mance Warner's undergone surgery on a broken tibia and fibula. So that's pretty serious injury.
And so, Mance Warner did get hurt, but I believe I don't think they said where he got the surgery. Danhausen got the injured tibia and fibula. And
I'm only reading it off Sean Ross Sapp's tweet saying like Mance Warner underwent surgery on a broken tibia and fibula yesterday. So
Oh, well, there you go. I guess they both suffered the exact same injury and both got the same surgery. Yeah, Danhausen and Mance Warner, great names. They should probably land themselves somewhere soon. I think comedy wrestling, it's not my cup of tea, right? But in the same way that I think Orange Cassidy is great, I think Danhausen is also great. And I think Danhausen could find himself in AEW as a fun character. But I also feel like maybe he's just better suited for the indies and just staying there. But I'd like to see him get a little bit more exposure because he's a fun character.
And before we move on to TV stuff, because there's been a lot of negatives so far, been a lot of discussion, a lot of just animosity towards just the way WWE's going in general. But anyway, at least a positive note story is that Vic Joseph and McKenzie Mitchell have gotten engaged.
Yeah, I like them. They seem like they're very great people, and they seem very happy together. And we on this podcast love, and congratulations to them. And yeah, I hope that they have a lifetime of happiness.
Absolutely. And if we are on YouTube, you should be wishing all the same to Tony and Caroline in the comments.
Absolutely. And yeah, those two are about to head off to Brazil. They seem like they're over the moon, and I couldn't be happier for them as well.
Okay, so solid, nearly 2 hours in. Let's talk about some TV. We'll probably speed through this stuff a little bit because I think there are some talking points, but I don't feel like there's anything super over the top. But let's start with Monday Night Raw. Go back to the beginning and work back from there. Actually, let's first of all, is there anything worth talking about from either NXT UK or 205 Live?
I did not watch either show this week because NXT UK was coming on right as the investor call was coming on, and then the firing started. So no, I did not watch either show.
Okay, I just quick glance at the results. I'd say like the only thing that's really worth talking about on NXT UK is that Rampage Brown won a match, and then he attacked Ilya Dragunov. So that's probably the next NXT UK Championship feud. And Meiko Satomura successfully defended the NXT UK Women's Championship against Ginny.
Yeah.
Is that. And then over on NXT UK, not NXT UK, over in 205 Live, should I say, Roderick Strong won a match against Ru Feng. Valentina Feroz beat Erica Yan. And the Grizzled Young Veterans beat Jacket Time, which is the name of Ikemen Jiro and Kushida. It's just
you want to talk about that real quick?
No, I can't. There's been too much already. I don't really want to. It's just it's a stupid name. Yeah.
My favorite thing about that promo is that Ikemen Jiro said, we should call ourselves Japanese. I was like, okay. Yeah, Jacket Time.
Yeah, so let's move on to let's talk about Raw then. So it opened with Becky Lynch defending the Raw Women's Championship against Bianca Belair. Good match from all accounts, and Lynch won by sending Bianca into the exposed turnbuckle, then rolling her up, and so Bianca loses again. Kind of a bit of a theme at this point.
And I think, look, I get that people are upset about this, but it's okay. Like Bianca had a great year. You know, I don't want this to become a situation where I'm talking 2 years from now and saying, well, in 2021, Bianca had a great year. But for right now, I feel comfortable in saying she had a good year. This is how things happen. She was eventually going to get cycled out. It just feels bad because there are people who are just like, fuck. So Becky comes back and Bianca is useless. And I understand that perception. But I think that this would have been the direction for Bianca by this time of the year anyway, because for some reason they cycle people like this. They never just keep a consistent push going. Because even McIntyre has spent part of his year fighting Jinder Mahal, you know?
Yeah, and later in the night, Becky Lynch was kind of promo, and she was interrupted, or at least turned into Liv Morgan.
Yeah, this needs to happen.
I mean, does it?
Liv Morgan needs a shot.
No, Liv Morgan needs to win matches. That's what she needs to do. And then I'll say, like, okay, then she should be challenging for it. That's the issue that I have, and I know that's not the way this company works, but Liv Morgan has spent the last couple of months jobbing out to Carmella. So why is she the next in line?
I'll grant you that.
Why is she next in line for the Women's Championship? It's just, I want to see her win at least 2 or 3 matches and then she gets a title shot. That is fine. That can work. I have no problem with Liv Morgan as a person or as a character challenging for the Women's Championship. I just don't think that Liv Morgan at this moment in time, when she's off the back of a losing streak, should be challenging for the Women's Championship, because it makes the Women's Championship... It just builds into the whole narrative of WWE, which is obviously a very clear narrative that anyone can see, is that wins and losses don't matter.
They really don't. Yeah. They really don't. And that's unfortunate.
Austin Theory defeated Rey Mysterio due to a disqualification, thanks to Dominic Mysterio hitting Austin Theory and the referee using his spider senses to figure that out. And
that's weird, because sometimes referees are just like, well, I know that I saw this thing happen, but I'm going to count to 3 anyway. I hate when they play around with the referees like that.
But Austin Theory at least keeps getting wins, and they're continuing what seems to have been going on for at least 6 months at the moment, the breakup story between Rey Mysterio and Dominic. But, that's... I'm sure they're going to drag that out to WrestleMania. So.
Yeah, this is their storyline this year that they're dragging out to WrestleMania.
Carmella and Zelina Vega defeated, Queen Zelina, that she's now referred to, defeated Nikki ASH and Rhea Ripley in a...
Shout out to Tony. He called that one from a mile away, that they would just pair those 2 together and put them in tag title picture.
Yeah. So this will be a feud over the tag team titles for the next 2 or 3 months, I imagine, before they have to figure out another women's tag team.
Another team, and then throw them together, while also simultaneously breaking up Nikki ASH and Rhea Ripley.
Yeah. So yeah, I imagine the next team will be something like Tegan Nox and Asuka or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. It could be anybody at this point. If Tegan Nox ever gets on TV at the very least. Finn Balor beat Chad Gable. That's just the thing that happened. And another match between the Street Profits and the Dirty Dogs. The Dirty Dogs win again because Omos keeps coming out without AJ Styles, because AJ Styles for some reason is off TV.
Which is peculiar.
Yeah.
But it's a non-medical issue, apparently.
Right.
He's just off TV.
So that's another thing that's happening, and so we're going to see more matches between the Dirty Dogs and RK Bro, it seems, for the tag titles.
Honestly, all 4 guys, fantastic wrestlers. I'm burned out on Ziggler. I'm burned out on Bobby. And, Randy Orton going from spending last year in the WWE title picture to spending this year in the tag team scene with Riddle, because this started right after WrestleMania, did it not?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're gonna get a year of that. It's very strange. I'm guessing it'll pay off in a series of matches at WrestleMania and then following WrestleMania, but still, it just feels weird.
Damian Priest defeated T-Bar in a no DQ match. I'm surprised. I was surprised to the fact they had him win, that it wasn't for the title.
I'm surprised that they bothered to give actual microphone time, and actually they're still putting a spotlight on Apollo Crews.
Yeah, so now Apollo Crews will... I mean, if it's anything indication like last year, he's now going to spend the next 6 months battling Damian Priest over the mid-card title. So.
But he'll eventually... So Damian Priest right now is my front runner to win the Royal Rumble. If it's not a Brock Lesnar or something, I think it'll be Priest. And I think in order to do that, he has to lose the U.S. title, maybe at day 1 or something. But I think Priest is the guy that they're going to put the rocket on.
My egg's firmly in the Brock Lesnar basket at the moment, but we'll have to see whether my opinion can be swayed on that, what happens going forward. And then in the main event, Big E defeated Kevin Owens. It was due to a roll-up after Kevin Owens tried to capitalise on Seth Rollins' interference. He then apologised to Big E, challenged Seth Rollins for the following week. Big E didn't accept the apology, hit Owens with a big ending. This was pretty good. Pretty good angle.
Yeah, I'm actually liking the WWE title picture. Look, is it an angle that's going to replace Rock and Austin as one of the best? No, but I like when the focus is on the championship picture.
Moving on to NXT UK, we had Mandy Rose coming out to talk about.
I think you mean NXT 2.0. You said NXT UK.
Oh yeah, sorry, NXT 2.0. Sorry, that's so interchangeable. I don't. No, it's
Yeah.
fine. But Mandy Rose comes out. She gloats about obviously winning the women's championship, and this leads to a 3-on-3 brawl between her and the other members of Toxic Attraction against Io Shirai, Casey Catanzaro, and Kaden Carter. That's a thing that's going to, I assume, lead to a 6-woman tag next week, and then eventually leads to 2 separate matches over the titles.
Yeah, it's a shame about Io because I don't want to see her on the main roster anymore because they won't do anything with her. But I also feel like she doesn't fit as well in NXT 2.0. I feel like she's kind of in limbo, at least in my eyes.
Yeah.
Casey and Kaden, they fit perfectly with NXT 2.0, and I'm sure that they will beat the golf bullies of Toxic Attraction and win those belts at some point.
And we had Kokai, who's now demonstrating a split personality character, or at least someone who's prone to bouts of anger and then taking it away. She defeated Cora Jade pretty easily, had a post-match attack, but then decided to basically call herself off to a degree. So I assume she'll lead into a match with another match with Raquel Gonzalez when Gonzalez is back.
Do you think that Dakota eventually actually beats Raquel Gonzalez?
I think she gets one win over her, and then Raquel wins the rubber match. Because obviously they've already had the match for the NXT Women's Championship beforehand, so they'll go 1-on-1, and then Raquel will get the victory in the end.
Fair enough.
The latest sign of WWE-ification of NXT is Robert Stone and Zion Quinn doing a karaoke competition.
Yeah.
And then having a match after that.
Robert Stone, the poor guy, he's so talented, and he chose to be a manager, and he's been a good manager, but they never really saw anything with him. And Zion Quinn, he's fine. He'll be on the main roster one day. I don't know if he'll actually do anything, because I don't know if anybody's actually doing anything right now, but I think he's good.
Yeah, but this absolutely sucked. So
yeah,
just nothing to be particularly interested about. We move on to Kyle O'Reilly and Von Wagner losing to Legado del Fantasma. So I imagine this is not going to be built towards, with Kyle O'Reilly seemingly departing in the next month or so, he'll end up in a feud with Von Wagner, and Von Wagner will beat him, and that'll be his big he's arrived moment.
Yep.
So again, nothing particularly interesting there.
Von Wagner, I don't like it. I used to love NXT, and I can't get into anything on the show outside of Braun Breaker.
Well, speaking of which, Braun Breaker easily defeated Andre Chase in a match. So I imagine he'll be champion sooner or later. Probably, maybe not the next champion, but champion after that, I think.
Now there is that rumor that the next special event is set for December 5th. It is not known whether or not it'll actually be called Takeover. I can see it not being called Takeover, because I can see them being that was a Triple H thing. And I hope Braun Breaker eventually gets that belt.
We'll move on to Solo Sikoa's in-ring debut, defeating the now released Jeet Rama.
How do you feel about him? Do you think they should have? Because he is a Samoan. I'm sure he'd do fine on the main roster.
Well, he's the brother of the Usos, so he could be a third Uso brother. I feel like he's fine having his own gimmick for the time being. He does look like he has some talent, and if they decide, okay, they can be part of the actual Bloodline act moving forward, then I'm sure they'll proceed ahead with it.
No, I'm not trying to be Tony and do a dumb pun. I'm genuinely asking you. Do you think that's why they named him Solo? Because he's not doing the Uso thing?
I just think that they just like coming up with dumb names.
Oh, fair enough.
So I didn't read too much into it beyond that point.
Fair enough.
Got Boa defeated Grayson Waller because of interference from LA Knight. yeah, I don't know if how they think this is helping get Grayson Waller over.
Hey, remember when LA Knight did like a cool thing with the $1 million title?
It just felt so long ago.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
Doesn't it? Like really? Like it was just in like August, and it feels so long ago.
Moved on to Carmelo Hayes had a in-ring confrontation with Tommaso Ciampa over which one of them is the A champion of the brand.
That's and then a stupid thing.
And then
of course it's the person who's the NXT champion.
Yeah, of course it is. And then it led to main event match, which is Kyle Hayes and Trick Williams against Johnny Gargano and Dexter Lumis. And Hayes and Williams got the victory. So, yeah, that's a pretty big deal because they tend to protect Dexter Lumis quite a bit. So getting the pin over him. And again, it adds more fuel to the fire that Gargano may not be sticking around because his last big job in WWE might be to put Carmelo Hayes over as North American champion.
And I'd be all right with it.
Well, yeah, they might as well do that. That's like, if he's not going to be sticking around, then that's what you do. We'll save AEW for last because I do like to end on a positive note. So let's talk more about SmackDown. So we had the whole build up from the start of it led to the main event. We'll talk about that as like an entire through line thing of Reigns, the Bloodline coming out, doing their stuff. They were interrupted by the New Day. This ended up setting up a main event match between Xavier Woods or King Xavier and Jey Uso. If Woods won, then Uso would have to bend the knee. If Uso won, then Woods would have to acknowledge Reigns and bend the knee to him. Woods did win. Uso went to bend the knee, but then Reigns interrupted. They beat them all up, and so I imagine this is leading to a short-term feud before Survivor Series where Woods battles him for the Universal title and just becomes another statistic in Reigns' reign.
Just to lead up to, hey, you're beating up my friends, so I'm gonna beat you up at Survivor Series. The thing that sucks about this Roman Reigns angle, and like, look, we knew it early on when they put him against Jey. Nobody's going to beat him. That's what made the Brock thing fun. Is that it was like, well, Brock might actually beat him. Not that you want to see Brock Lesnar as champion again, but Brock might actually win. I don't see anybody on the brand that can beat him. Now, they are doing the Drew thing, but I'm not interested in that. Like, if you're going to tell me that Drew is the best guy that you've got to take on Roman, when Drew was having a hard time earlier this year with Lashley, and even like Jinder was getting the better of him for a little bit, I don't know if I want to see Drew versus Roman. My issue is I don't see a believable challenger on the horizon for Roman Reigns.
We saw the continuation of the Naomi and Sonya Deville stuff with Shayna Baszler involved when Naomi seemingly defeated Shayna Baszler in a match after rolling up from the clutch. But then Deville said that because there should have been a rope break involved, which didn't happen, it meant that the pinfall didn't count. And so she restarted the match and Baszler applied the clutch and got the submission victory. I'm enjoying the way they're building this up.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm very torn here because I am seeing people say, hey, let's move this along. But at the same time, it's like, actually, if they're trying to tell a story, just let them tell the story, even if it's basic. You know the story they're trying to tell. And Naomi's on TV. So can you really be upset if that's what you've been saying that you wanted?
They've done stuff to establish Shotzi Blackheart now as a fully fledged heel.
Which I don't like because they haven't established Sasha Banks as a fully fledged face. Yeah. Whatever.
And the fact that like now apparently she's had all these people that she's turned her back on her into like losing title shots and her tag team partner, and she's seemingly now intimating that she's going to get rid of the Tank, which is a big part of her character, or at least has been when she was a babyface. And so this is another indication of WWE stripping away everything that helped get somebody over.
Thing.
In
this is the Otis thing. Hey, we actually really like this guy. He's a lot of fun. Now let's strip him of that.
Mm.
It's stupid. Like, Shotzi Blackheart is a fun-loving babyface. Sasha Banks is like a Kardashian level heel.
Yeah,
Why?
but they need her to challenge Charlotte Flair because they haven't established anyone else as a big enough deal to face Charlotte Flair for the women's title.
Dude, the Four Horsewomen are rapidly going from like, oh wow, we're so happy they're doing this new thing with women to like, fuck these women.
Yeah, or it's just a case of like they should have been the foundation of which to you establish these four, and they're like the pillars of the company, and you use those pillars to build up people not above them but alongside them, and then eventually would take their place. And they've never reached that point. They've always just kept those four at the top, and everyone else's can't climb those pillars, or at least not for any considerable length of time. The only ones that have managed to do it for, I guess, to a degree, are Bianca and Asuka, and even those two have like both been somewhat limited in how far they can go beyond them.
And Asuka was firmly established as the backup player. Where like Becky went down, we don't have Charlotte here. We'll give you an entire year of Asuka, but Bianca has seemingly been the only one that is like on par and has broken through. Because even Ripley feels like she's been firmly placed underneath them. I don't know. It feels wrong. It feels frustrating because you want more for this division, and right now they're just so complacent with like, no, we're still gonna coast on the fact that like we've gotten to the point where women's Royal Rumbles are a thing, women's ladder matches are a thing. So we're gonna put women who, whether it was their dream to have a ladder match or not, we're just gonna like put them in these positions because now it's expected. You know, I don't like it. I just don't like anything I see with the women's division right now.
We had Los Lotharios in their first match on SmackDown. That's obviously a team of Angel Garza and Humberto Carrillo.
I like it a lot.
And they beat Cesaro and Mansoor.
I like it a lot.
Yeah, they're a very good tag team. They show a lot more. Carrillo's now showing a lot more personality, and it's a lot more intriguing than when him as a really bland baby face. I didn't really find I don't like Cesaro just jobbing like that. That's just me, just because it just feels like he's an irrelevant part of the show now again.
Look, I never wanted it to be right when I said they're going to let him beat Seth Rollins at WrestleMania and then never give him anything again. But I was.
Yeah,
And
you
it
were.
sucks. And it sucks.
Yeah. Drew McIntyre continues his tear of just beating everybody else on the SmackDown roster before he inevitably takes on Roman Reigns, this time beating Ricochet.
Because they don't know if they want to do Drew versus Roman, Brock versus Roman, or a triple threat.
Yep. There was a backstage segment as well where Ali offered to offered to team up with Ricochet. Ricochet refused, saying that he's a jerk. And so I guess we're now doing the main event feud between Ricochet and Ali now on SmackDown instead.
Hey, look. Those matches were good. He was very happy with them. Maybe we can have some good matches.
We had a happy talk segment with the Viking Raiders, which then led to a tag team match between the Viking Raiders and Corbin and Moss, and the Viking Raiders won by count out.
You wanna talk about the liking to a Viking joke?
I'm going to be honest with you, Rob. I'm reading these results because I didn't watch the show. So, you can bring up anything you want.
Let me tell you, as somebody who does the same, it's very shocking to me when yesterday it was brought to my attention that Madcap Moss apparently said, "How did some joke that was apparently like, oh, how did the woman suffocate? She took a liking to a Viking. What the fuck? like what is that? Okay." I just thought you would want to hear that because I was flabbergasted when I heard that.
Yeah, well, again, it's really hard to shock me at this point in time with some of this stuff. Even stuff that, like, even a few years ago, I'd just go, what? They actually said that? I'd just go like, it's part of the course now.
It's a terrible. It feels like it's one of the worst eras they've ever been in, and that's really bad.
Well, let's move on to something then that's will always put a smile on people's faces and at least talk us about some actual pro wrestling. Let's talk about some AEW stuff. So,
Yes.
Dynamite on Wednesday. We had Kenny Omega defeated Alan Angels in the story they've kind of built up about how they've obviously taken off the stuff that happened last year where the internet, well, a lot of people on the internet went crazy about the fact that Kenny Omega couldn't be at that time an unsigned jobber in over a few minutes. And then they decided to build this up into, okay, sign now, and they're telling the story of the fact that Alan Angels is a guy who realistically shouldn't be on Kenny Omega's level, but is just somehow has his number or has something about him that can.
We just won't die.
That can at least leads to mean Omega struggles a bit more than he should realistically do against someone with his record.
Yeah, and it's a fun story. I like that they take the criticism that's against them and they work it into a story, and I always appreciate that. And I like that Alan Angels is no longer wearing the mask. I like that he's sort of becoming his own man while still in the Dark Order. And I like that Kenny Omega went with the V-trigger because you should establish those things as finishing moves.
Had CM Punk come out to cut a promo where he addressed the Jon Moxley thing, and he called out Eddie Kingston as well to meet him at Rampage. We'll obviously talk about that when we get into the Rampage stuff, but again, it's just another Punk promo where it's very good because he's very real in everything that he says.
And I've said this a lot lately, but he reminds me a lot of The Rock when The Rock came back in 2011, and it was like, oh, he's on another level. But Punk is on another level in a different way because he's just, everything he does feels like studio wrestling where the guys were still being presented as like authentic people. And Punk just comes across as so genuine. Even like the seamless transition from, and damn it, I'm proud of Jon Moxley, and you should be chanting his name, and also Eddie Kingston, you disrespected me. I'm going to be in St. Louis on Friday, and I want an apology.
So he had a free on free brawl between the Super Click and Christian Cage and Jurassic Express, which ended up with Christian hitting a concerto onto Adam Cole. At
first I was like, okay, I want to see Christian Adam Cole, and I still do. But what they've announced for the pay-per-view is a 3-on-3 false count match, and I'm like, yeah, I really want to see that match.
Yeah.
That just sounds like so much fun.
Yeah. I'm kind of okay with that being like the drawing the line under this feud, because it probably, especially with the Young Bucks and Jurassic Express, has been going on for a little while now. But draw the line under it with that one. But it should be a really fun 3-on-3 brawl. So looking forward to that. We also had the AAA tag team titles on the line. I know you mentioned something on the Dynamite review, but I want to completely echo that sentiments that those championships look like they're made out of plastic.
Dude, they look like they were made on Etsy, and like not even like quality. Like they just look really, really bad. And for some reason, and I've seen them before, but I couldn't get over it on this show because they looked so out of place.
So FTR successfully defended the titles against Aerostar and Samurai Del Sol, who, if people aren't aware of that name, was Kalisto in WWE.
Was totally Kalisto. He was even doing the Lucha hands. He's good. Aerostar's great. I wanted a little bit more from him. Like, I don't know. It just sort of felt like, okay, cool. It's literally just Kalisto.
From what I gathered from watching it, it was like a case of, I think that Aerostar got hurt or was just feeling something a little bit early on, and so was kind of off a step. And maybe it was a mixture of like the Clash of Stars, because obviously one is heavily Lucha based and the other one's FTR, very much more mat based traditional tag team.
Well, but they've done it because remember it was FTR that they put through those stupid. And this match is competed under Lucha House Party rules. They're just like, so they've worked together. I just feel like maybe they were off a little bit of a step. Still a fun match, but like I was expecting a little bit more from Kalisto's first non-WWE outing.
So we had the Inner Circle and American Top Team having a verbal sparring match with each other before announcing their match at Full Gear, which would be a Minnesota 5-on-5 street fight, where they decided to name the members of the Men of the Year, obviously Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky, Junior Dos Santos, Andre Orlovsky, and Dan Lambert be the fifth member. Obviously, you've already mentioned how you want to see that match close with Filthy Tom Lawler taking out Jericho and helping American Top Team score the victory. The segment itself, again, it's typically polarizing with Jericho stuff right now.
Yeah, I've never gotten your opinion on those things.
I honestly don't mind it. I know it's very low hanging fruit, but I think that there seems to be this stigma that's now being associated with Jericho, which is a case of like, oh, the old man who's been in the company for too long and is like, he's taking up time and he's maybe holding back Sammy Guevara and Proud and Powerful. And maybe it's me being like too like enamored with everything that he's done in the past to maybe not be able to take a fair reflection and say like, oh yeah, he is doing his old Y2J stick. But I feel like some people are being way too critical on it on the other side of things as well. And I think this stuff they said about like the Paige Van Zandt stuff, like the stuff about the OnlyFans and taking on 5 guys at once. It's like, it's sophomoric humor, but sophomoric humor can be good.
I think since the beginning of this feud, people have been like, these jokes suck, they're sexist, they're outdated, they're homophobic. But it's like, if everybody's playing along and they're setting up the jokes, you can't just keep going, oh, that damn Jericho and that damn Lambert. You know, it seems like a team effort to me. I'll admit this isn't my favorite Jericho, just because Jericho's always been built on reinvention, and that's like he's not doing that right now. He's very much, I'm gonna do Y2J and everybody's gonna pop. Now again, everybody is popping, so I feel like what I say doesn't matter, because if it's working in the building, it's working, and that should be all that matters. I don't mind it as much, but of course, like, sophomore humor doesn't affect me all that greatly because a lot of people I know still have sophomore humor. So it is what it is. I think this weird thing where people act like all those jokes should be locked in a vault somewhere, you've got a long way to go before everybody who has relied on those jokes is just going to be phased out completely. That being said, Paige Van Zandt, I know a lot of people might feel like this is overblowing it. I do think she shows something, and she needs to be given an opportunity to flesh that out so we can see if it's good or bad. But Paige Van Zandt has been one of the highlights of this whole angle for me.
Yeah, I think that she's been doing very good. She clearly shows a lot of good character work, and she seems to be a good promo as well. My question is that whether she does want to do it, because that's always been the big talking point, is it? Because I can't imagine that ever since Paige Van Zandt started coming onto the scene, that she's never been approached to do pro wrestling, whether it's with AEW, WWE, or anybody else. And the fact that she hasn't done it does give an indication, like, this is the closest she's ever come to being with wrestling promotion. So I'm just wondering, if she wants to do it, then I think that she's more than worth giving an opportunity just because of her name value and the personality she's shown so far. It's just, just whether she wants to do it beyond this point. So right. We'll see. We had the latest match in the TBS Women's Championship Tournament. We actually had 2 matches this week, but the one that took place in Dynamite was between Anna Jay and Jamie Hayter. Decent little match. I don't think it was like anything super spectacular, but Hayter got the victory, so she advances in the tournament where she'll take on Thunder Rosa next. And
Jamie Hayter's great. I think she's phenomenal, and I enjoyed watching her win. It was a quick match. One was a lariat. That's all you really need.
Yeah. And you had both Tai Conchi and Thunder Rosa coming out to make the save when they did a post-match attack on Anna Jay. Yeah, I think they're doing a decent job. Nothing super spectacular, but decent enough to see Conchi's challenge for Britt Baker's title. So they're building that up. We had a typically great MJF promo segment where he addresses Darby Allin, talks about all the stuff about them being the pillars of the actual AEW homegrown stars. Talk about them being like how he's going to beat Darby with a headlock takeover, and because Darby's going to get over emotional, and that's going to lead to his downfall in their match at Full Gear. Alan says that he's not going to get over emotional, but then during a post-match brawl where you had like Sting and Sean Spears and loads of other
random assortment of people.
Yeah, random sort. Apparently X-Pac as well. It's the stuff.
Yeah, that was clearly something that they thought. Yeah.
Yeah, and and then eventually it led to but Alan did kind of lose his cool a little bit, and I guess that's the story they're going to play into in the match, which is he's going to try and keep wrestling with MJF, but eventually he's going to start doing more of his Daredevil stuff, and that's going to end up costing him, and MJF will be able to take advantage of that. But it's a match I'm very much looking forward to. I feel like
I'm looking forward to this match so much because it feels like one of the first times in a long time they're putting emphasis on their pillars. Now then, I kind of want to see Darby Allin win because I think the MJF formula right now is he always wins the first match and then you build up to rematch. I want to see Allin beat him first and then MJF doesn't get a shot because MJF, as good as he is, you're already forming a formula, and I want to see that broken before it gets a chance to stay.
So what you're saying is you don't want to see MJF win and then win the title on the very next episode of Dynamite?
I do not want to see that in West Virginia. No, I don't. But I do think, and I've said this a few times, that MJF could be a great foil for Hangman Adam Page. And I do
absolutely, he should be. I have no question about the idea, or no qualms with the idea that MJF should be the world champion after Page if Page does win at Full Gear. That makes perfect sense. It just doesn't have to be the very next show.
Right.
We had Cody Rhodes versus Andrade El Idolo. Again, another good match between those two, and because when Rhodes attempted a suicide dive, FTR interfered, attacked him. That led to Andrade getting the pin with the Hammerlock DDT. Lucha Bros came out and made the save when they had like a post-match attack between Andrade and FTR. And so that helps build towards presumably some sort of what we imagine will be a tag team match between Cody and Pac against El Idolo and Malachi Black at Full Gear, as well as obviously the tag team championship match. So yeah, I think this is pretty good.
I liked it. I get so geeked for dumb things like, oh shit, Arn and Tully are squaring off, and I do think it's all going to be revealed at some point that they're in on it because they've never said a crossword to one another on television, and I think at some point it will be revealed that they're masterminding something. I don't know if I like the fact that Andrade keeps getting to use FTR. I really wanted more from the Pinnacle, and I'm waiting for that to come to fruition.
Yeah, it has felt a little bit. They felt a little bit disparate since their formation, really. So then we had the World Title Eliminator Tournament semi-final. Obviously, it was meant to be Orange Cassidy against Jon Moxley, with Jon Moxley going into taking time away. He was replaced with Miro, who is the absolutely perfect choice to take over. They had another very good match. Miro defeated him and forced him to tap out to the game over. And then we get Bryan Danielson against Miro.
Which I'm surprised has never happened on WWE.
They never had a match as Rusev against Daniel Bryan.
Which I think you gotta say, like, that's fantastic that even if they're doing WWE guys, they're doing matches that haven't happened.
Yeah. It's definitely I mean there's practically no match on Full Gear that's listed at the moment that I'm not looking forward to, but that's one that I'm definitely super excited about.
That is absolutely one of the ones that's top on my list. I don't know if I want Miro to be the first guy to beat Bryan, though.
It is quite interesting because I felt like, because now obviously the plans have changed because we don't know how it was going to end. I felt just between Moxley and Danielson, if that was the idea. And it seems like it was the idea because Cassidy didn't win, so I imagine that they were going to go with Moxley in the first place. And so with Moxley building up, like having a bit more of an aggressive streak to him during the match with Ted and stuff like that, it felt like he might have been turning heel. And so that would be more in line with him challenging Page. But I don't feel like, I mean, that's now the choice you make. Do you go with Danielson and have him challenge for the World Championship? Because I feel like Page could be the first guy to beat Danielson. I think that really helps establish Page as your world champion if that's like his first person that he defeats. Or do you go with Miro to do the more babyface and heel dynamic?
I think a Danielson Page is more enticing. And I think if you look at it like that, you could always say, like, Bryan is a babyface, but Bryan came into the company saying, nah, I want to beat the shit out of people, so you can always turn him. At the same time, Miro was never world champion, ever. So you can always say, oh, does Miro run through Hangman Page to get, the love of his wife back and all that stuff? So there are still multiple options. I just think I'd go with Danielson because I don't want Miro to beat him first.
Now, part of me is like actually like when we talk about this, like making me like super excited for the Hangman Page reign. If it does happen, it does start Full Gear. But because we talk about this and we talk about Danielson and we talk about Miro, and every one of those ones feels like they could beat Page at any point in time. And I think that's going to make his reign very exciting because every time that he has his challenge, as long as it's like a top tier person like those two, or it's like Punk or MJF or anything like that, people are going to think that, okay, this is the one where the title reign ends.
Right.
So I hope he doesn't lose it on the first couple of attempts because that would kind of ruin that speculation surrounding it. But
and and they are starting to become more stories like that where people are expecting him to lose it quickly, so they could have him hold on to it for longer.
Over on Rampage, it started with Bryan Danielson against Anthony Bowens. Max Caster cut one of his rapping promos to start with, including alluding to John Laurinaitis releasing a lot of WWE talent, like Danielson's father-in-law.
Which is crazy, because at first I had to think about who his father-in-law was. And then it hit me, it's John Laurinaitis, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, they had a good match because Danielson only knows how to have good matches at the moment anyway, and that ended up with him defeating Bowens, of course, in the LeBell Lock. So he's winning with every move in his arsenal at this point. So that's good to establish, and still super looking forward to that match for Full Gear, as we mentioned. A new match was actually booked for Full Gear as well when we got an unbelievably good promo segment between CM Punk and Eddie Kingston on Rampage.
I think this is the beauty of AEW, right? You take a guy like Eddie Kingston, who was in the industry forever, but never really broke through. And you take a guy like CM Punk, who, there's all these stories of him leaving. Here's a story from 15 years ago that nobody knows existed, And it's so raw and so genuine. I love it.
I love this segment just because even though there are bits and pieces where they were a bit I don't say started a little bit, but moved it felt unscripted. But that's because that was the beauty of it as well. It's that it was seemingly unscripted, and those two were just playing off their history, and they were given a few bullet points. Okay, we need to lead to this, but then they just said, okay, go out there and do it. And these two are just so good at what they do that they could just tell that story between each other without having have a fully fledged script listed out with pre-planned verbiage and stuff like that. Just go with the motion of the audience. And the audience was so into it. You just tell they were just listening to everything, and they were super into both guys, which is great as well, because Kingston is beloved, even though I feel like he'll be the one that plays heel in this one a little bit more. But they're both showing babyface and heel tendencies throughout what they were doing. Yeah, I just absolutely loved it. I thought this was a great segment, and I'm very much looking forward to their match at Full Gear.
And I really liked the idea of, who's going to be the first guy to get under CM Punk's skin. And you're thinking, oh, it has to be like MJF. And no, it's a guy from his past that he didn't really even interact much with, except for here's a guy who can bring up how much of a shitbag CM Punk is in his past life. Because yes, you are telling the story of CM Punk as a very mentally healthy version of himself, but he was an asshole, and I loved the promo. And again, so raw, so genuine.
We had the latest match now in the TBS Championship tournament, probably the most inconsequential match of the entire tournament, because it's the Bunny against Red Velvet. Red Velvet defeated the Bunny, but it didn't really matter who won anyway, because the next person in the line and facing them will be Jade Cargill, and Jade Cargill will obviously win. So
Yep. Just there it is.
Yep. Don't really much more to say about that. And then the main event was Adam Cole against John Silver in an excellent match, because John Silver is great and Adam Cole is great, and yeah, there's very much more to say about that. These two are awesome, and they have an awesome match.
And the right man won, and the Adam Cole is so good, and I can't believe they let him walk, because he walked right onto the perfect TV show for him, and you had the perfect opportunity to be like, no, WWE is your dream, and they let him walk right onto the perfect global program that is built for Adam Cole. It's crazy.
Yeah. But yeah, so again, still more build towards the 3-on-3 match that will happen at Full Gear. But yeah, it was good episodes of Rampage and Dynamite.
Good episode of Rampage, good episode of Dynamite. A perfectly told story throughout all these shows. AEW, and look, they're eventually going to hit a point where something's going to get formulaic, something's going to get a bit messy. But right now, really savor this. They are in a can't-miss era of their run, and I just hope it lasts for as long as it can.
Absolutely, and yeah, so that brings us to pretty much an end of everything, unless there's something that you would like to add.
I do believe that is the end of everything. I will just do a quick once-over of the news. Oh, let's talk about this real quick. Okada has challenged the former Buddy Murphy to a match.
Yeah.
How do you feel about
that? It's probably going to be great, because the thing that's always been, well, a lot of people have always drawn comparisons between Buddy Murphy and Kenny Omega. So
yeah.
So I imagine that that'll be pretty similar to this as well, and we're going to see. Yeah, I think it's going to be a great match, because Okada looks like he's back to his best, because he's recently won the G1, and so that means he's
literally using
now in the
his
focus
belt.
again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now is the focus point again, and so yeah, I think that it'll be an excellent match, because both guys are great.
And I mean, they need a little bit of stability right now, because that new world title seems like it's cursed. It does. Like, a lot of people keep getting hurt, and it's unfortunate, but I'm excited to see that match.
Yep, absolutely. So, yeah, but again, a few positive things to end off on after always a pretty somber edition of the news. People losing their jobs. It's obviously never a nice thing to see, but there is excitement in what we hope to see for them in the future. So always try and find the silver lining in things.
Yes.
Yeah, along the lines like, hey, Tony's no longer here, but you still got us.
You do still have us.
Yeah.
And this was a longer one, but I'm glad we could bring it to you, even though Tony is away taking a much-needed vacation.
Yeah.
And continue to support, guys. Continue to support Smark Out Moment and Fanboys Anonymous, our sister website, by just checking out the websites, checking out the articles, check out our YouTube and all the stuff we've done. Like, I know not only are you getting the fantasy booking stuff, but over on the Patreon, on the Darkcast here, we did a watch along of Halloween Havoc 93, which came out of the blue, and we've done watch along King of the Ring on our YouTube, and all that stuff is there. Check out Fanboys. We've done watch alongs all year long, practically, of movies like Jungle Cruise and Mortal Kombat, and we did all the Batman animated movies that have come out this year. So just check that stuff out. Support Tony by heading over to Patreon, by heading over to Redbubble, TeePublic. Every dollar counts, especially now as they have a wedding to pay for. So all that stuff's great. Make sure to check out the website and all the articles, including the power rankings, which this guy contributes to, and he's fantastic. I know that the most recent one was headlined, Is there anybody even left to rank anymore? Which I thought was fantastic.
I always try and add a bit of colour to my headlines for that one, just to make a few jokes if I can at any opportunity. So yeah, hang on. Basically, it's along the lines of if there's any opportunity to make fun of WWE, I'm pretty much going to try and take it.
And nobody would blame you.
Yeah, and so yeah, just check out the power ranking stuff. You can also track the fantasy league, because I would tell you this week's done well, as pretty much the whole season has done a huge number of, like, my fantasy team's been fucked from the get-go pretty much, but this week in particular has done pretty badly, because this week I lost on my fantasy league team both Kyle O'Reilly's coming up soon. I lost Franky and Monet, and I lost my captain, Karrion Kross. So
no.
And the issue is I can't replace any of them until I win stuff on I win some more pay-per-view prediction contests. So I'm hoping Survivor Series goes in my favour quite a bit. And I'm now sitting. I want to put it this way: if you haven't been tracking so far, just to give you a bit of a update. So on week 15 of this thing, there were just 25 points separating first and third, which at the time was Rob was first, I was third. There were just 25 points separating us now. Now we're at week 25. Rob is still ahead with 1,019 points combined. Tony is close on his heels with 980 points. I am now sitting on 783 points. Ooh. I am this season's Rob.
Oh yeah, like last year, I wasn't gonna let that happen to me twice.
I'm this season's Rob, and unless I get a lot of trades available to me at Survivor Series, I'm going to walk into this without potentially three of my, at least two, potentially, several members of my roster unavailable to me for the foreseeable future until fucking day one on the 1st of January. So that's the way things are looking for me at the moment. So yeah, but check out all that stuff as well, and you can follow me on Twitter at Weekmeister14. And Rob, why don't you round us out?
That's right, and you can also follow me on every social media platform at Dude Felice, including Twitch, and I have started streaming. I did my first stream last Saturday, and it's looking like Saturday might be the day that I do some streams, because Saturday is the one day for sure that I am free. So follow me on twitch.tv/DudeFelice. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram at DudeFelice. Check out Fightful.com. Sean Ross Sapp was basically the main source breaking a lot of the release news. So go support him and the great team over there. And I thank you for everything. And as always, we'll be here next week. Continue checking out the Fantasy League stuff and fantasy booking stuff for the all-time roster, and we'll see you next time. And oh my god, I just realized I was waiting for Tony to come in. I've never gotten to do this, so I'll do this. That's all for us. But for now, this has been another Smark Out moment, and we are being counted out.